Okay, welcome back to the council. We had a lovely recess celebrating Black History Month, so thank you for everybody who joined us there. And in a continuation of making Montgomery County a more fair and equitable place with social justice, economic justice, and transit justice at the forefront, I am pleased to present a proclamation recognizing Transit Equity Day. So if my T&E partners can join us. There we go. Doing all the roles today. So if we want to bring up everybody else who is with us also, I know June Henderson with Friends of White Oak, and Rachel Evans is here too, and Peter with ECAB, and Alex Bell, Yvonne Brooks Little with Action in Montgomery, and Christy Daphnis as well with MoCo Families for Safe Streets. Yeah. Anyone else is, come on, join us. If you've made your way to Rockville, and I know this is a team effort, and so a number of these organizations brought more friends and supporters. So yes, please come on up as well. Yeah, we're friends. Get on the bus. Here we go. So I'm really glad to continue our work in promoting transit and transit equity. And one of the most important data points here in Montgomery County is recognizing that our average median household is $108,000, but the average household income for a bus rider is approximately $35,000. So we provide a lot of help and a lot of services. We have a really strong social safety net here in Montgomery County, but sometimes the best place to meet someone and offer a helping hand is where they're at. And oftentimes that's at the bus stop. And so that's why transit equity is so deeply important as well, because we know that the greatest indicator of someone's economic opportunity is their access to transit. They could have a great education, they could live in a great community, but if they cannot get to their job or cannot get to school, they are literally stuck where they are. And that's what we're talking about here, and that's what all these incredible advocates and community leaders are here for. But first I want to turn it over to my colleagues on the Transportation and Environment Committee. First I'll turn it over to Councilmember Kate Stewart.
Thank you, Council President Evan Glass. I'm glad to be here with all of you today for Transit Equity Day. This is so important for our communities, as Councilmember Glass said, because as we look across our communities, we need to make sure that everyone has access to public transit. And we know for too long, when people talk about things like the pink tax and other things that, women paying more for transit because of they're dealing also with childcare issues and other things, and public transportation isn't always the best option for them. Same thing with Black and brown residents in our community. When we look across the board and we look at where bus stops are, do we have bus shelters everywhere where we should in our community? And I'm very proud of the fact that in Montgomery County, we are looking through this through an equity lens and really focusing on the equity emphasis areas as we're thinking about our public transit. And so thank you for joining us today, and I'll turn it back to Council President.
Thank you, Councilmember Stewart. Now bring up Councilmember Marilyn Balcom.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be on the T&E committee and very happy to be here today. Transit equity is a workforce development issue as well as quality of life issue for our residents. And we need to do all we can to make sure that all of our residents can get to their jobs, can get to daycare, can get to the places that they need to be. And as an up-county person, we need more transit. We need more transit options. We need a comprehensive system for everyone, and so I'm so pleased to be here today, and thank you, President Glass, for including us.
Thank you. I love our new committee, so give it up for the two awesome new members. Also want to bring up special guest June Henderson to speak with us. June is a longtime resident of White Oak and the Silver Spring area, and she is part of the Friends of White Oak, and it is a community that is very heavily transit dependent, and June can talk about that. June, you're behind me.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would first like to recognize our council president, Evan Glass, and all of the council members. I am a public transit rider. I say I'm a 98.5%er. I use transit for everything. When I go to the airport, I know most of the bus routes. So I previously lived in White Oak for 20 years. I've been a resident of the county for 38 years. I now live in downtown Silver Spring, so I see the difference in transit in Silver Spring opposed to transit in White Oak. So I am extremely grateful that our council president decided to put some attention or spotlight on the White Oak area, the Lockwood area, Old Columbia Pike, and one of the greatest things that he has done is to make the two of the routes accessible to the hospital, to Adventist White Oak Medical Center. And those bus stops will actually be focusing on other areas where people can get to work easier, they can go shopping easier. So I'm just extremely grateful because this will make a huge difference for a lot of people that work in the White Oak area, people that work in the hospital, and we also have a new college that is coming to the White Oak area, and that bus stop is immediately there for the students. So I am just grateful for this interest in the White Oak community. Thank you.
Thank you, June. And I'll just expand a little bit and say that it was at a East County Citizens Advisory Board meeting about 2 years ago where David Lorenzo was attending, and residents were concerned about their access to the brand new hospital, saying it was inaccessible by transit. So we reached out to WMATA, we reached out to Ride On, and now there is a bus line to bring people to the hospital. So I'm glad we were able to get that done. There's more things we need to do. And we have a few more minutes. I don't know if anyone has any additional comments. Director Conklin, I see you. You want to say something too?
I just want to take this opportunity to make sure everybody knows that we think the transit service we provide to the residents of our county is one of the most important things we do in the Department of Transportation, and really commend the county executive and council for funding transit at a level that most jurisdictions don't. And we know that this level of service available all day long, 7 days a week, to get to people between their homes and work and other locations is really essential and a major component of the work Montgomery County is doing to provide more opportunity for people to improve their lives as residents here. So thank you to all my colleagues for recognizing the importance of this today.
Hi, Christy Daphnis. Thank you, Council President Glass. On behalf of my fellow advocates in the Washington Area Bicyclist Association, Montgomery County Families for Safe Streets, Action Committee for Transit, and several others who are not even affiliated with various groups, I just want to say how important it is to call this day and to talk about transit equity, not just from a level of service perspective, but also from a safety perspective. People with lower economic means and people of color are much more likely to be injured or killed on our roadways. And improving transit overall, including the safety and accessibility, is really important. And I definitely appreciate having the chance to be here today and to recognize this day. Thank you.
My name is Yvonne Brooks Little, and I work with Action in Montgomery. My colleague Alex Bell is here. And I want to say I, too, am a transit rider. And because I take the buses, I almost didn't want to move out here from Bethesda because I said, how will I get around? I gave up my car, only to be very pleased with the number of bus routes in our area. And now with the new shelters. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Excellent. So now I'll bring my colleagues up and we'll read the proclamation. The County Council of Montgomery County Proclamation. Whereas Transit Equity Day is observed every year on February 4th, the birthday of civil rights leader Rosa Parks, to commemorate her life and legacy and recognize that work is still needed to remove barriers to transportation access. And
whereas access to affordable and reliable public transportation has proven to be a determinant of a person's ability to access employment, housing, school, and medical appointments, and
Whereas a key component of transportation equity is affordability, as it is often necessary to make multiple transfers to get to any destination. The daily cost of public transportation can limit ridership and negatively impact family budgets for the most vulnerable in our communities. And
whereas Montgomery County recognized this cost burden and approved $1 ride-on fares to ensure that everyone, especially our essential workers and low-income residents, have access to reliable transportation.
We should do this in height. And whereas Trans Equity Day affirms the right of all Montgomery County residents, including communities of color, economically disadvantaged, people with disabilities, and seniors, to have full access to safe, reliable, and affordable public transit.
now, therefore, my first one, now therefore be it resolved that the Montgomery County Council hereby celebrates and affirms Montgomery County's commitment to fair and equitable transit for all and recognizes Transit Equity Day presented today, February 7th, signed by Evan Glass. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you. And we have some extras too. Okay. Thank you all very much. Good to see you all. First item of business this afternoon is a public hearing on Bill 2522, Forest Conservation Trees. This is a public hearing on Bill 2522, Forest Conservation Trees. This bill would exclude activities in the commercial residential zone from qualifying for certain forest conservation plan exceptions, exclude any development that occurs within an environmental buffer from qualifying for an FCP exemption, change the timeline for approval of a natural resource inventory, forest stand delineation, increase the amount of forest required to be preserved in lower density land use categories, increase forest planning requirements in higher density land use categories, increase forest reforestation ratios, require planting of forest in all unforested stream valley buffers, amend the requirements where forest retention required by the forest conservation law is not possible, broaden the terms of maintenance and management agreements to include required maintenance for areas of existing forest retained to meet forest mitigation requirements, expand mitigation requirements for variance trees to include mitigation for variance trees located within a forest, allow landscaping to meet both reforestation or afforestation requirements in equity-focused areas, update the allowable types of forest reforestation or afforestation requirements in equity focus areas, update the allowable types of forest mitigation banks allowed in the county per recent amendments to the State Forest Conservation Act, and generally amend the law requiring forest conservation. A Transportation and Environment Committee work session is scheduled for Tuesday, February 27th. Persons wishing to submit testimony material for the Council's consideration should do so before the close of business next Tuesday, February 14th. There was a lot in there, and that is why I have specifically requested that we have this this public testimony today, even though this bill was introduced and public testimony was received last year in the previous council. Judy, we're going to be providing you with some help right there. I'd like to bring up 5 individuals who are in person to testify. Kristen Taddy, Doug Boucher, Lucy McFadden, Amanda Farber, and Eric Fisher. If you could come on up. Very good. Thank you all. Ms. Taddy, we'll start with you. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Kristen Taddy, and I'm a forest conservation planner with Montgomery Planning. I manage the department's Reforest Montgomery program, which offers free trees and reforestation for county residents. And I've been coordinating the No Net Loss of Forest initiative since November of 2021. No Net Loss of Forest is an effort by the Montgomery County Planning Department and Planning Board to review the impact of 3 decades of forest conservation efforts and identify opportunities to strengthen the Montgomery County Forest Conservation Law. The primary goal is to achieve an equal or greater area of forest planted compared to forest cleared on a county-wide level by projects subject to the law. The county's forest conservation law is successful in many ways. For one, it has permanently protected over 15,000 acres of forest in the county since it took effect in 1992. The law ensures forests are protected and in many cases planted as part of the development process. Planning Department data includes the amount of forest cleared, protected, and planted by projects that are required to comply with the law. In reviewing this data, the past 10 years show a trend toward less forest clearing and more forest protection by development projects. In fact, the recent statewide technical study released by the Hughes Center shows that only an estimated 21% of the forest lost in Montgomery County was cleared for development, while over 70% of the forest lost was due to conversion to tree canopy and natural areas. We are close to achieving no net loss of forest by projects subject to the law, but forests in the county are also facing competition from invasive species and a rapidly changing climate. Bill 2522 retains the requirements of the forest conservation law that are working well for our county and introduces changes that would achieve no net loss. The bill also presents an opportunity to address other causes of forest loss in the county and expand our forest conservation programs. Montgomery Planning collaborated with forest conservation experts and stakeholders to discuss ideas for modernizing the law, examine similar amendments introduced by nearby counties, test proposals on real projects, and consider financial obstacles to increasing planting requirements. After taking on these analyses, we are confident that this proposed legislation will achieve the goal of no net loss of forest countywide, while continuing to encourage much-needed developments like affordable housing and public transportation projects in Montgomery County. The proposed amendment aligns well with the goals of the Climate Action Plan and has been thoroughly reviewed by Maryland Department of Natural Resources for compliance with Maryland's Forest Conservation Act. We look forward to discussing the 4 additional amendments that have recently been requested by stakeholders, which we largely support, during the upcoming work session and working with you to finalize this significant amendment to the county's forest conservation law. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boucher.
Thank you. I'm Doug Boucher. I'm testifying on behalf of Poolsville Green. Let me say, first of all, I support the bill with the amendments proposed by the Montgomery County Forest Coalition. My colleagues will go into that. So let me mention something that is distinctive about mine. I urge you to add a sentence or two to the bill requesting that the Planning Department create an alternative pathway for mitigation that is based on natural regeneration of forests. This has several advantages. It's much, much cheaper than tree planting, and thus it's accessible not to just a few, but to many ordinary landowners in Montgomery County. It would make it possible to increase our county's forest cover appreciably, not just no net loss, and would provide important climate benefits too. Furthermore, by linking the credits from naturally regenerated forests to projects for low-income housing, it would help incentivize the building of urgently needed affordable housing in our county. My written testimony goes into detail on our success in regenerating forests naturally. Let me just mention a few aspects of it. First of all, it's been done over 4 acres entirely by natural regeneration with no tree planting. The regenerated forest, now 20 years old, is 99.5% native tree species and in far greater abundance than tree planting. The density is 3,240 trees per acre. The requirement of the Planning Department is 100 trees per acre. And it's making now a substantial contribution to alleviating climate change. Furthermore, the cost is much, much lower. If we had done this 4-acre reforestation by tree planting, it would have cost at least $70,000. Using natural regeneration, the cost is at most a few $1,000s. So it's got those advantages. So what I would request is that you ask the Planning Department simply to develop an alternative pathway for reforestation based on assisted natural regeneration and report back to you about any legislation or regulations that would be necessary to implement it. It should be complementary to the existing program. It should allow tree planting as part of assisted natural regeneration, but not require it. In my written testimony, I give some basic principles that might be followed, and I'd also ask you to request that the Planning Department look at the possibility of linking these low-cost credits to affordable housing. This could make a good deal of difference in terms of alleviating the housing crisis that we all recognize exists in Montgomery County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Boucher. Ms. McFadden, turn on your microphone. Perfect.
Thank you, Council President Glass and council members, for this opportunity to testify in support of Bill 2522 today. And thank you, Councilmember Albornoz, for sponsoring the bill. I'm a retired NASA scientist, a volunteer Maryland naturalist, and today I'm testifying on behalf of the Montgomery County Climate Action Coalition. We are a network of 17 local organizations advocating to reduce greenhouse gases by 80% by 2027 and 100% by 2035. As you know, conservation of forests contributes to sequestration of carbon dioxide, and the presence of trees and contiguous greenways play a vital role to protecting our waterways, cooling the air in our urban areas, and making our communities beautiful, as well as promoting the well-being of its residents. I've reviewed the proposed amendments, and in collaboration with Montgomery County Forest Coalition, we've engaged in discussions with the Planning Board staff. And we've also considered the proposed amendments in light of the release in November of last year of the Maryland Forest Technical Study on changes in forest cover and tree canopy in the state of Maryland. I refer to this as the Hughes Report. So in our examination, we still support this bill, and it is really time to pass this bill and move on toward pushing for increased forest cover and tree canopy in the county. We've been under a mandate to maintain, to have no net loss, but with this release of this Hughes study, I think it's time to move on and try and grow the forest cover in our county. And why do I say that? Because in the Hughes report, Montgomery County stands out in its loss of forest and tree canopy, second only to Prince George's County over the past couple of decades. And together, the two counties account for 50% of the loss of forest and tree canopy in the state over recent decades. And my written testimony shows the figure that shows that data. And so this bill, the bill, as you know, and as Council President Glass read, does provide opportunities for developers to clear less forest and to increase the planting ratios that we need so much. So in conclusion, I'm going to ask for your support of this bill now, and also to ensure that as you appoint new planning board commissioners, that you ensure that they recognize the value and importance of trees to our community, to our climate emergency. And so I'll stop there and just ask you to consider supporting this bill as we advocate. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Farber.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Amanda Farber. I'm a participant in the MoCo Forest Coalition on behalf of Conservation Montgomery. It's great to be here in person, and thank you, council members, for hearing testimony on Bill 2522, and you'll also have our written testimony. So I always start with this because I think it's an important distinction. There are three main laws which apply to tree canopy and forests in our county: the roadside tree protection law, the tree canopy law, and the forest conservation law. Here today, we are focused on ways that we can improve our forest conservation law, but our other tree laws desperately need strengthening too, and hopefully those can be addressed in the near future. I would like to acknowledge the years-long work and contributions of the MoCo Forest Coalition, a group of organizations which came together with a goal of ensuring that our county adopts a no net loss of forest policy and hopefully eventually achieve a net gain outcome. I also applaud the planning staff for the immense effort that they put into this bill, which is before you, holding many stakeholder work sessions and a process which involved considerable collaboration and compromise. Since the previous public hearing on this bill, as you've heard, the Hughes Center completed their long-awaited study of the state of Maryland's forests. The first line of the report states, "Forests represent one of Maryland's most important natural resources, critical to its economy, sustainability, health, and identity." And it's true. Forests are the workhorses of the natural environment, cleaning our air, reducing urban heat islands, managing stormwater, capturing carbon, supporting biodiversity, and economic benefits. The report highlights the fact that Montgomery County does continue to lose valuable forest, and that forest fragmentation is a serious ongoing threat to the health of our forest ecosystems. We as people also need healthy forests to thrive, and therefore more must be done. All of the recommendations before you now, which are supported by planning staff, the planning board, and the MoCo Forest Coalition, represent an urgently needed step towards strengthening the forest conservation law. They align with recommendations in the county's climate action plan, and they allow for reasonable flexibility. We urge you to act on them now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Farber. Mr. Fisher.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the council. Eric Fisher. I'm the interim executive director for the Maryland office at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and thrilled to represent the thousands of members of our organization here in Montgomery County on this matter and ask you to adopt this bill. This is a very real issue. This is not a theoretical issue. This is a very real matter with tangible consequences for the county. Some of my colleagues here have discussed some of those impacts, but especially in light of climate change. This county cannot afford to be one of the statewide leaders in forest loss. Flooding can be addressed by forests. Heat can be addressed by forests. These issues can be fixed in this bill, at least in part. The data show consistently, whether it's the Hughes study that just came out in November, forest conservation reports filed by the county over the years, or other remote sensing data that's been collected, that forest loss is a persistent issue in the county. It's generally the fastest outside of southern Maryland, here in Montgomery. And as I said in October, this is not to point fingers, but to clearly point out that you all need better tools to manage forests. This bill is better tools. It is extremely well vetted. We have been working with a number of counties around the state to improve their forest conservation acts, and I have to say the process that was undertaken by the planning staff and stakeholders in this county is exemplary. We appreciate their accessibility, the data that was provided, and we believe it's resulting in a solid product. But what are your neighbors doing around the state? You are not alone. Frederick County requires an acre of replanting for every acre cleared, twice what this bill requires. Howard County requires replanting ratios as high as 3-to-1 when planting outside the local watershed where forest is cleared. There are elements of that proposal in this bill as well. Anne Arundel County added new protections for priority forests, better definitions, and clearer standards when deciding whether or not to cut priority forest. All of these measures are adopted, they are in place, they are working to protect more forest, and development activity continues. They just have more trees. Could this bill in Montgomery County be stronger? Absolutely, but we understand that this bill works in concert with other tree laws in the county, like the tree canopy laws, and other tools at your disposal, like the zoning ordinance, the comprehensive plan, your climate plan. We're looking forward to continued conversation about this bill, but we believe it's in a form that is passable and effective, and we urge that action from you as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher, and thank you all for your testimony today. Now we have three more individuals who will be testifying in person. Anna Mudd, Matthew Wessel, and Judith Koenig, who is already up here.
I can't hear anything.
You'll be the third, Judy, you'll be the third person who testifies, so give us one more minute. The clerks have been trying. I know. Okay, Ms. Mudd, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Anna Mudd. I'm the Senior Director of Policy for Potomac Conservancy. We represent more than 5,000 supporters in this county, and as your constituents, we want action and leadership from the County Council on forest protection. Many of my colleagues and partners with the Montgomery County Forest Coalition have already made several of the points I plan to make today, so I'll keep this brief and just let you know that we fully support this legislation, and we hope that you take action as soon as possible to strengthen Montgomery County's forest conservation law. And I also just want to commend the planning staff for being so accessible during this process and for coming into meetings with a true spirit of collaboration, which was really greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Wessel.
Good afternoon. I'm Matthew Wessel, and I chair the Environmental Committee for the Maryland Building Industry Association. I'm also a licensed landscape architect and an ISA certified arborist with experience in titling projects and implementing the forest law in Montgomery County. MBIA submitted written testimony that demonstrates that Montgomery County has already known net loss in terms of forest, and this is based on data provided by Montgomery Planning that specifically measures the impact of forest by activities subject to the forest conservation law and to bigger projects that were too recent to be included in the data. The data does not include forest impacts from agriculture, highway and transit development projects, or forest loss from any other activity not subject to or exempt from the forest law. Recently, it was mentioned that the state released a forest technical study showing that statewide forest is stabilizing despite the population having grown 17% during the time frame studied. While useful for the big picture, the technical study does not provide a direct comparison to the data provided by Montgomery Planning. Forest is defined differently, development is not specifically defined, and areas are based on GIS versus site visits. The County Forest Conservation Law is based on the state's enabling legislation written in the early 1990s primarily for greenfield development. These large tracts of land generally have more opportunities to minimize forest clearing and meet mitigation requirements on site. It should be mentioned that the state is getting ready to propose a new bill to revise this enabling legislation within the next couple of weeks that could impact these efforts that we're discussing here today. So the future of development in Montgomery County is redevelopment. Because of the way the calculation works, the law impacts these projects differently, often requiring more forest mitigation than forest cleared. Since you can't plant more forests than land available on site, mitigation for these projects often requires purchasing credits from forest conservation banks. Historically, there's not been banking credit available in the urban watersheds where most infill and redevelopment occurs. Regardless, proposed changes to this forest law increase the amount of mitigation required when banking credit is not available in the same watershed as the project. Additionally, a state law passed in 2021 eliminated the ability to establish banks based on preservation, further limiting the supply of banks. If mitigation is increased and banks are not available, the net result will be more in lieu fee payment to the county, not more trees. The points were discussed during stakeholder workshops, as mentioned, held by the Planning Department that included the MBIA Forest Coalition and others. It was a great experience, and while we do not believe any changes are necessary, we acknowledge that the Planning Department tried to balance concerns from multiple stakeholders when drafting the proposed legislation, and except for the mitigation banking components, what they are proposing is more reasonable than some of the other things that we've seen proposed. So that concludes my testimony. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Ms. Koenig, and because Ms. Koenig, you are testifying on items 4, 5, 6, and 7, you get 5 minutes to speak.
Sir, I can't hear a word with this thing. All I'm getting is static. It doesn't matter what level it is. I've tried 2 of them. They're absolutely worthless.
Well, we hear you now, and you have 5 minutes for us to listen to you.
Well, actually, I think I have 3 things, so that's going to take a little bit more.
You have 5 minutes for all of those 4 items.
This is a waste of money. I can't hear with it.
We're listening to you, Ms. Koenig.
Before I start, you all should have a sheet of paper. I would like for you to put your name, your address, your email, and if you're on a committee or something, the committee, if you're head of something, write that down. I would like a record of that. I'm asking, excuse me. I'm asking that you all pay attention, don't write anything, and listen, because you're going to get a test afterwards. I see 1 person smiling. 2, 3. Oh God, the 1 person who I wouldn't mind seeing with the hangman's noose has the biggest smile on his face. You have one here on property taxes. I'm a senior citizen. I have to pay property taxes. It went up about 15-20% from the last year to now. I don't have the money to pay it. The only way I can do it is sell an old car, and then I would be tempted to pay it in pennies, and unround pennies for about $9,000 plus. It's an awful lot of pennies. It would require a Mack truck to bring it here. So that's my comment on property taxes. They keep going up. The house has gone down in condition, but you keep raising them on me, and we've lived there since the 19th of June, 1958. Spending affordability. Before you make comments on what you're going to do or not do, you need to listen. Make sure you listen to everyone. My priority is that the school system get the money they need. The environmental protection people get the money you need. And now that we have 11 people up here, I don't know what your salaries are, but that to me is a waste of money. I don't see why we have to have 11 when 9 of you couldn't seem to agree half the time on what you were doing. And to me, it's a waste of money. And whatever you're eating, I hope it's good. That's on spending affordability. You need to look at a way not to have to raise taxes, look at a way to provide adequate funding for senior citizens, adequate transportation, and an adequate entrance. I walked more just to get up into here from where I had to park at the handicap spot than I have in probably 6 months. Primarily because my scooter is temperamental. It works when I take it to the shop. When I take it out of the shop, it says, go to hell, it's not going to work. Forest conservation. Anything you do to protect the trees is great. Unfortunately, your director of parks doesn't give a damn about the trees. I can show you, if I had them with me, dozens and dozens of pictures of trees that are dying because of his neglect. He's been director of parks, I think, for about 4 years now, and the quality of the parks, definitely at Reeves Green Valley, unit number 1 and 2, have gone down significantly. I don't go much out that, so I really haven't checked the rest of the county. The trees are overgrown with vines. You used to be able to walk up to the creek. You can't because you have an area with overgrown weeds and stuff from about here to that wall. The trees are dying. They're overgrown with weeds. And he doesn't give it, well, I'll say who rather than what I want to say about what the quality of the parks are. In the last couple weeks, I've had to call the park police down there. Why? The sign says you're not supposed to be on those fields, but they've got 15, 25 people out there tearing up the fields, playing on them, and I have to, when I happen to see it, I call the park police. And I'm tired of having to do it. Those fields are closed. They're not supposed to be used. And if you don't hold the director of parks accountable, then he's incompetent and you're incompetent. I'm tired of this. Rock Creek Spring Valley Unit number 1, also known as Candy Cane City, has people on it all the time. Usually right now during the school day, it's in the afternoon. And I'm tired of it. So you figure out how you're going to deal with that. My other comment is directed towards one of you. And my feeling is this person should be removed, charged with malfeasance, and hasn't done a single thing to benefit the Parks Department. The Parks Department area has deteriorated significantly. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of dead trees. There are so many vines and weeds and brush growing all over the place.
Ms. Koenig, your time is up.
Within 20 feet of the creek. The creek is eroding with the bank being cut.
Thank you very much, Ms. Koenig. We will take all of
hear you, so there's no point in talking.
All of your thoughts into consideration on all 4 items. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, everybody else, to the other panel. We now have 2 people who will be joining us virtually for testimony. First is Denise Guattara, followed by Carolyn Taylor.
I'm sorry, I should have a little bit more than 5 minutes. That's only not even 2 items.
Ms. Koenig, the standing rule is 5 minutes, so thank you, which is 2 more than most other people got today. So thank you. Ms. Guattara, are you on Zoom?
Can you hear me?
We hear you. We don't see you.
I have my camera.
There you are. We see you.
Okay.
You have
Great.
3 minutes.
Great. Good afternoon, Montgomery County Council. My name is Denise Guattara, Maryland Conservation Advocate for Nature Forward. Our mission is to inspire residents of the greater Washington, D.C. region to appreciate, understand, and protect their natural environment through outdoor experiences, education, and advocacy. We thank the Council for the opportunity to provide testimony on Bill 2522. The recently released Hughes Center report on Maryland's forests found that Montgomery County and Prince George's counties accounted for more than 44% of the state's total tree canopy loss. We're rapidly losing our forests, and the time to take action to save our forests is now. After more than 3 years of conversations with planning staff, environmental community, and community members, we, as members of the Montgomery County Forest Coalition, are confident that the proposed legislation, as we have reviewed it to date, will improve the conditions of our county's forests. We would like the County Council to approve and not weaken Bill 2522 any further. We are pleased with the results of our partnership with the planning staff and recommend this legislation and hope that the County Council passes it soon. However, on its own, it will not do enough to protect our forests because the jurisdiction of the Forest Conservation Law is limited to certain circumstances. For example, it does not protect street trees, which is under the Tree Canopy Law and DEP, or the right-of-way of trees, which is under MCDOT's Roadside Tree Protection Law, and does not guarantee investments to maintaining and improving the health of existing forests as it relates to controlling invasive plants and providing the long-term tree maintenance. Over the coming years, there will be more work to do on these laws that complement and work together with the Forest Conservation Law. Ultimately, our goal and the goal of the County Council should be to protect not just trees and patches of trees, but full contiguous forest ecosystems. A full ecosystem that includes a healthy soil, drainage, healthy fungi in soil, healthy microbiotic communities in soil, biomass, ground cover, shrub layer, tree understory layer, tree canopy layer, and a diversity and types of trees and plants. On behalf of Nature Forward and our 28,000 members and supporters, we recommend the County Council supports and moves forward with Bill 2522 and does not delay or weaken it any further. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Caroline Taylor.
Happy to be here. I don't know if you can see me okay?
Yep, we see you.
Happy to be here on Transit Equity Day. I'm testifying today on behalf of Montgomery Countryside Alliance, home of Relief the Reserve and LandLink Montgomery. We're planting native forests along stream corridors and connecting new and diverse farmers with fertile land upon which to grow. I'm so pleased, uplifted really, to offer support for this bill aimed at strengthening our county's forest conservation law. What a wonderful early action of this fresh and expanded council to enact without further delay and ensure its implementation. I'll send in full written testimony as my job has been made easier here with previous testimony. Our county has set up important and sweeping goals to achieve climate change resilience, equity, and livability. This legislation, the result of years of deliberative and collaborative effort, will be critical towards achieving those goals. As others have noted, there will be other necessary actions, including ramping up our response to the significant challenge of invasive species. I just want to take a second to tell you about one of the favorite parts of my job, and that is when we bring students and adults into our forests, whether along the Potomac and Mile Creek, Monocacy River. There's something poignant and real about the difference of the people on buses with their faces in devices and their worries, their concerns, and their anxieties, and those that emerge after an hour or two in our deep and beautiful forests. It is an amazing connection that is established. It is healing, it is educating, it's connecting. Our forests, as Amanda noted earlier, and I swear I didn't crib off her testimony, are workhorses sequestering carbon, cooling, providing biodiversity and stormwater control, protecting our source water, including our Piedmont aquifer. And they tend to our well-being. Their protection must be intentional and without delay. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today and look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Thank you, everybody, for your testimony. This public hearing is now closed. Next item on the agenda is item number 4. This is a public hearing on Bill 123, Property Tax Credit, Elderly Individuals and Retired Military Services Members Amendments. This bill would amend the property tax credit for certain elderly individuals and retired military service members, and generally amend the law regarding property tax credit. A Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee work session is scheduled for March 9th. Persons wishing to submit material for the Council's consideration should do so before the close of business, Friday, March 3rd. There are two speakers for this item. I would like to invite up Mr. Paul Geller and also Christine Feinthal. Mr. Geller, we'll begin with you.
Thank you very much, Council President Glass, Vice President Friedston, and all our distinguished council members. I'm here today because of a friend of mine whose name is Doug. All of you have campaigned a lot harder than I ever have, but you've all campaigned and you've run across many people in the community who've shared their personal stories with you, like Mrs. Koenig. They're concerned about being able to live here, and I really come here today because of our seniors. Doug lived here in Montgomery Village for 28 years with his wife. They loved living here. They raised their kids here. They thoroughly enjoyed it. Yet in October, he and his wife had to move. It eventually became the cost of property taxes that caused them to leave here. Now, Doug is like any other one of our great residents. He contributed greatly to the community, but more importantly, he had a gift that he's actually sharing still in Howard County that I wish we had here in Montgomery County. And this is something that I think in the hustle and bustle of every day we kind of forget. Doug trains people how to be entrepreneurs. He does it very, very, very effectively. He's probably one of the greatest entrepreneurial minds I've ever met. And I, for the past 4 months, have been going to take his classes in Howard County. And I do so because I'm fascinated not only by what I'm learning about being an entrepreneur, more importantly, I'm fascinated by the people that attend his classes. We have 3 people in the class who actually work with people who are returning citizens, or as we used to call it back in the day, getting out of jail and trying to start their lives over again. The class is a rich diversity of what our community is. And Doug teaches it out there because he really couldn't get a class started here in Montgomery County. There are so many people like Doug and his wife that have been burdened by property taxes, and I would like it that if people lived here for 30 years, that we would give them a tax break at that point. And I do appreciate this council member Cass for introducing this legislation. And I do realize it is a burden to change that amount, but I think 30 years would be fine. I also think that it should be indefinite. People like Mrs. Koenig have lived here since 1958 in their homes. Now, they may have stronger opinions, and they may say it differently than I do, but she helped make this county, a great place. We have a lot of work to do to make it a better place, but I want to make sure that our seniors can live here in comfort and peace, that they can enjoy the fruits of their labor. They add a lot to the stew here, and they also are great volunteers that we don't tap nearly enough. So I would hope that you would take some consideration to these requested amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Geller. Ms. Feinthal.
Thank you. I am Christine Feinthal in Wheaton. I am not happy to be here because I'd rather be spending clearing away the vines from my forest canopy of 3 trees in my backyard. I have solar panels, a rain garden, and 3 rain barrels, so I'm doing all the good things for the environment, yet no help whatsoever from the county. Now, your friend Doug would not be eligible even at his last home in 28 years, yet the bill says 40 years. That is a real hardship. I bought my Wheaton house in 2010, and as the law stands now, will not be eligible for the senior subsidy until I'm 101 years of age. I will be in a nursing home or dead by that time. No help. There's no help for lower income homeowners. With my house, I will only be eligible at 77 years. The law has to be changed to 20 years. I think 20 years is a reasonable amount. 40 years is too hard and strenuous. DC government does not restrict by years of ownership, only by income limits. My ex-husband, living in Bethesda, who has lived in his house since 1970, and has income of over $60,000 a year would qualify, but I, with my income of under $30,000 and at 73 years and just 12 years at my house would not qualify. So this 50,000 increase would actually helps the upper middle class people and does nothing for lower middle class people, because it still has that restriction of 40 years. Never mind raising the valuation. The ownership period has to be decreased. You mentioned 30 years. That is the right step. I'm proposing 20 years. I don't want to have to wait to 101 years to use this. And my house in Wheaton is a very modest house. Again, I'd rather be working on the tree canopy in my own backyard than being here on a beautiful day. So please, personally, this sounds like a gimmicky bill, and does not really do much for the people that really need it. Lower the number of years that one has to own and be in that house to at least 30, but better yet, 20, because then I will be 77 years of age in my Wheaton house.
Thank you very much, Ms. Feinthal, for your testimony.
Thank
you
you.
all. This public hearing is now closed. Now there is no additional testimony. Now on to item number 5. This is a public hearing on Bill 223, Board of Investment Trustees Membership Amendments. This bill would modify the membership of the Board of Investment Trustees by removing the Director of Human Resources and replacing with the Chief Labor Relations Officer as an ex officio member, and generally amend the law regarding the administration of employees' retirement benefits. A Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee work session is scheduled for February 16th. Persons wishing to submit material for the Council's consideration should do so before the close of business on Thursday, February 9th. We already heard testimony prior, and there is no additional speakers, so this public hearing is now closed. Item number 6, this is a public hearing on the spending affordability guidelines for the FY24 operating budget. A Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee work session is scheduled for February 9th. Persons wishing to submit material for the Council's consideration must have done so prior to the close of business Thursday, February 2nd. Joining us virtually is Janice Sartucci. Ms. Sartucci, there you are. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. The Council is at this hearing to review affordability. Merriam-Webster's defines affordability as able to be afforded, having a cost that is not too high. Today's hearing is about affordability in funding county government entities. Yet the County Council neither expects nor demands that the agencies they fund evaluate the affordability of their purchases. County entities funded by the Council are free to spend without ever even reviewing the costs of their purchases. Case in point, MCPS has gained national attention for what it claims is a budget-neutral electric school bus scheme. MCPS entered into a 4-year, $168 million contract to replace a fourth of its diesel school buses with electric school buses. The question is the scheme affordable? I asked MCPS for the financial models the then MCPS Transportation Director Todd Watkins claimed in the press had been used to approve this scheme. I filed a Maryland Public Information Act request for the financial models. The response from MCPS was, there are no responsive documents. Assuming that was a mistake, I asked again. I got the same response. There are no responsive documents. Not surprisingly, just last week, MCPS Administrator Brian Hull told Board of Education members that this year, MCPS will begin evaluating to see if MCPS is achieving savings on the fuel and maintenance in the electric school bus scheme. It looks as if the national press was a bit premature. Another surprise in the MCPS electric school bus procurement was the appearance of 2 sets of RFP bid evaluation and selection criteria documents from the same date and from what appears to be the same MCPS reviewer. I received one set in my MPIA, and another set was filed in litigation in Montgomery County Circuit Court. Juxtapose the two sets of electric bus bid evaluation documents from what appears to be the same person with the September 2022 Maryland Office of Legislative Audits report that revealed, quote, the existence of an account maintained by a transportation vendor outside the control of MCPS's Office of Finance that was funded with amounts owed to MCPS. This off-the-books account was used to make payments to several MCPS employees and to purchase goods and services circumventing MCPS's established policies and procedures. Would those kickbacks have influenced the electric school bus procurement selection process? Here's what we know. We know that the electric school bus vendor was also a subcontractor on the Highland Electric Transportation proposal that was ultimately awarded the contract. Is the MCPS electric school bus scheme affordable? We really don't know. Might the County Council consider investigating this $168 million procurement as they evaluate how to fund our public school system? It might be a good idea. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Sartucci. We previously heard additional testimony, and there are no other speakers, so this public hearing is now closed. Item number 7 is a public hearing on the FY24 capital budget and supplemental appropriations to the FY23 capital budget. Amendments to the FY23 to 28 capital improvements program for the county government, Montgomery County Public Schools, Montgomery College, Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, Washington Suburban Transit Commission, the Revenue Authority, HOC, and municipal and state projects, and the FY24 to 29 CIP for WSSC Water. There are a number of people who will be testifying. Most are in person, so if Michael Brintnall, Nermaine Donopoulos, Bob Nelson, Laura Stewart, and Lee Kaiser can all come down. There are more seats down here, Ms. Kaiser.
You give me a minute and a half and I'm out of here. You don't give me a minute and a half, I'll sit here.
Mr. Brintnall, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, President Glass, members of the council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'm Dr. Michael Brintnall. I'm the chair of the Board of Trustees of Montgomery College, and I'm here with Dr. Jermaine Williams, our president. We are grateful for the county's support for the Montgomery College and certainly appreciate the opportunity to present specific and very targeted capital requests. Mr. Elrich has recommended full funding for the college's capital requests, which include funds for library renovations, for responding to deferred maintenance, and for some technology projects. But there are two in particular that I want to bring to your attention. One is planning for a 4th campus in East County. These funds will give us an opportunity to thoughtfully plan for this conference. You know, in the interim, we have already been setting up an education center in East County. That will be opening for students this year. It's a saying about community colleges, and it's a truth about community colleges, that community colleges meet the students where they are. And establishing a campus in East County will truly be meeting students where they are. A second project that I'd like to bring to your attention is in Up County. And this is in Germantown campus to develop a student services center. A student services center is a place that can locate auxiliary services and educational services for students in one place. Includes advising, it includes financial aid, other support services such as those for veterans and the like, aligned with a library renovation. That includes, among other many things, an opportunity for space for students to study in an isolated way. It's something we don't always appreciate, but many of our students don't have their own quiet place to study, and this resource is important. So it's important to meet students where they are, but it's also important to give them a place to be students. And so we encourage the support for this integrated student services center. We're asking your help for modern facilities to serve our students. And these are students like Jefferson Vasquez Reyes. You may have seen him recognized by Governor Moore in the State of the State address when pointed to him up in the balcony where he was sitting with President Williams. MC met Jefferson where he was, arriving in this country as an immigrant, supporting his family to get himself and the family ahead. And he's turned to MC as a step on his pathway to medical school. So with your continued help and with the high-quality resources and facilities and educational programming, we can propel students like Jefferson forward for the good of our community. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for elevating Jefferson's story, and Dr. Williams, thank you for being here as well. Ms. Demopoulos.
Good pronunciation. My name is Nermeen Demopoulos. I am the MCC PTA AVP representing Walter Johnson, Bethesda, Chevy Chase, and Whitman clusters. Congratulations to all the new council members, especially council members Sales and Stewart, who represent our clusters. We are supportive and grateful to the Board of Education's CIP request, which includes the reopening of Woodward High School, and we look forward to working with all of you to complete this project. WJ cluster coordinators who preceded me testified before this council over a decade ago, urging for a solution to be found to the looming overcrowding crisis in our high schools. I first began to advocate for a solution to overcrowding in 2016 when my daughter was in 2nd grade. My daughter is now a 9th grader. Even with the CIP amendment as approved, and we beg that it will not help her. Woodward will open too late for her, but it will not open too late for countless WJ and DCC families with younger kids who are dependent upon Woodward to ease the overcrowding in their high schools. Construction costs have gone up due to national and international factors, but also due to state mandates, overlapping interests, and delays. Just one example, contractors are on site for Phase 1. Delaying Phase 2 means paying those contractors whether we're building or not. We know the cost of major capital projects are a strain on the CIP. However, they are also essential. Woodward is mentioned in the Rock Spring Master Plan, Bethesda Master Plan, all 3 White Flint sector plans, Laytonsville sector plans, and other master and sector plans as a capacity solution for high school overcrowding in Bethesda, Rockville, Silver Spring, Kensington, and everywhere in between. There are multiple other projects within both BCC and WJ that are needed as part of the CIP. But I would like to briefly transition to Whitman's ADA concerns at Burning Tree. Burning Tree is severely out of ADA compliance. An ADA assessment performed in 2019 found 47 barriers to accessibility in a split-level structure with no chairlifts. Teachers have been seen physically carrying students in wheelchairs, which is hazardous to all parties and embarrassing to the students. The CIP has both big-ticket financial needs and smaller financial needs. It is essential to fully fund the Board of Education's requests so that each and every MCPS project needed across the county can be completed. We urge the county to engage directly with fellow political leaders in the county and state level to ensure that this project and the MCP Public Schools CIP is fully funded. Thank you to Presidents Glass, Vice President Friedson, and all council members for my ability testimony today.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
Good afternoon, President Glass, Vice President Friedson, and council members. I'm Bob Nelson, past chair of the Up County Citizens Advisory Board and a 40-year resident of Montgomery County. Now, most people in Montgomery County think that the police stations have their own buildings, but that's not true in District 6. The current facility is in rented space and lacks several features of a modern police station, including the reinforced interview rooms and a dedicated sally port. The land on Watkins Mill Road has already been set aside for a permanent police station, and I support the funding for the construction of this police station. Now, Goshen Road is a 2-lane road serving our Goshen community and historic black communities such as Stewarttown, but for most of the length of the road, there are no shoulders and no sidewalks. I've seen people with suitcases rolling them along in the travel lanes as the vehicles are going 35 miles an hour. I made a request last year for the installation of sidewalks and was rejected because the length of the sidewalks was exceeded the county's sidewalk program. But pedestrian safety is critical. Having no sidewalks along busy Goshen Road is a very dangerous situation. And when you see potholes developing in a bridge deck, one knows that replacement is needed. That's what I saw the other day. That's exactly the case on Brink Road Bridge over the Seneca Creek. You know, the costs of bridge construction for this project are eligible for up to 80% of federal aid. Yet the Brink Road Bridge replacement keeps being deferred. It's now at FY26. You know, if we lost this bridge in Goshen, we would have a detour that would be 5 miles in length. Well, it's a new day in Annapolis, and Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller knows well the need for the Mid-County Highway, as she worked on that as part of the Montgomery County Department of Transportation. Snowden Farm Parkway is completed in Clarksburg, and only 5.6 miles are left to complete the long-awaited Eastern Arterial. Now is the time to enlist the support of the state of Maryland, along with county resources, to fully fund this project. For example, Howard County contributed $17 million, and the state paid $151 million for the just completed Route 32 dualization that has a similar sized project scope as the Mid-County Highway Gap. I also ask you to reject proposed dedicated bus lanes in the Up-County. That drastically reduces the capacity of current infrastructure already congested as a result of development going forward without the construction of master plan routes. The proposed implementation of the Maryland 355 BRT in the Up-County should be rejected in favor of flexible, efficient, and cost-effective transit solutions. I had an office over in Reston for 6 years. You know, we really need a new Potomac River Bridge and the 35-mile gap between the American Legion and US 15. And of course, the Poolesville Ferry there at White's Ferry is not operating. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Ms. Stewart.
Good afternoon, President Glass, Vice President Friedson. My name is Laura Stewart. I am the MCC PTA Down County Cluster Vice President and the CIP Committee Chair for MCC-PTA. DCC schools have many urgent needs that will not be met if the BOE recommended capital budget is not fully funded. These include 3 DCC high schools that have capacity problems: Blair, Northwood, and Einstein. They have a combined total of 44 portables today. The Silver Spring International Middle School project has already been downsized, partially due to costs, and this project has major safety implication for students. The Highland View project has been planned and replanned throughout many years. Eastern Middle School is still waiting for its turn for an upgrade, which is also long overdue. All these projects have been delayed, and more delays would be demoralizing. These are just some of the pressing needs in the DCC. In fact, most of MCPS CIP projects have seen delays as we have failed to properly fund the budget for many cycles. We have consistently robbed HVAC modernization money to keep other projects afloat, which has resulted in many years of HVAC delays. Even with hundreds of millions of dollars more added to the CIP from the Built to Learn Act, the adopted FY 23 through 28 MCPS CIP was not a record-breaking CIP. How did we get here? Inflation in the COVID economy blunted the effect of the Built to Learn Act, which that it would have had. But there is much more to the story. We need to take a hard look at years of underfunding our school construction budget. We reduced bonding without discussing how to replace those funds. In the last county growth policy, once known as the SSP, we cut impact taxes and did not implement the increase in the progressive recordation tax. We also supplanted some of the Built to Learn Act in order to fund other urgent needs in the countywide CIP. Even if a tax change is passed, there will be a delayed effect in adding significant revenue, and it will not make up for the total loss to the MCPS budget by reduced bonding and inflation pressures. We need relief in the short term, and adjustments in the year-to-year SAG could be a tool while we wait for possible new revenues. We also need to look at pay-go and reserves. But parents expect a long-term fix. We want a steady funding stream to meet the needs of our schools. We will continue to advocate for the state to contribute more, and we expect MCPS to show transparently us how they are spending our money wisely. There are ways to improve our capital program, but we can no longer ignore years of underfunding the MCPS CIP. So I ask, please fully fund the BOE recommended CIP. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Ms. Kaiser. Over to your right. There you go. Oh, it was on. Oh, there it is.
Good afternoon, President Glass, Vice President Friedson, and council members. I am Lee Kaiser and was a pre-pandemic president of the South Bradley Hills Neighborhood Association in District 1. My theme today is Zoom, as I'm calling for accelerated action on Bradley Boulevard MD 191 CIP, stuck in final design stage. First, we need to zoom to start construction on this sideway bikeway project, P501733, instead of delaying it until FY28 and beyond, per the county executive's proposal. Here's why. This 1 mile stretch of Bradley Boulevard is a major 2-lane commuting route. Adding sidewalks and bikeways is referenced in the 1990 Bethesda Chevy Chase Master Plan and supported in the 2018 Bicycle Master Plan. Oddly, the project justification text omits the 1990 Master Plan. Construction would close the gap of a partial sidewalk along Bradley Boulevard that's closer to Bethesda's Central Business District, built nearly 30 years ago. Last month, ride-on bus service was gratefully increased along Bradley Boulevard, further evidence of this well-traveled transit route. Yet, alighting riders remain at increased risk without sidewalks. Today's joint transportation letter to Maryland DOT prioritizes design and construction of pedestrian bicycle safety implementation on state highways. Accelerating construction on CIP 501733 aligns with this priority. Second, we need to zoom in on the Bradley Boulevard project and study concurrent efforts. Another CIP intersection and spot improvements will add left turn lanes to the Bradley Boulevard Wilson Lane intersection, also first recommended in 1990. But this project's stormwater plans stop a block short of where the State Highway Administration's research years ago documented the worst flooding. We need to zoom in and better coordinate these two projects. Zooming in also reveals a new adjacent Kenwood Park community sidewalk request. Their eastern border is Bradley Boulevard, but the Bradley Boulevard CIP, until it's constructed, the proposed community sidewalk would end at sidewalkless Bradley Boulevard. Third, it's important to zoom out. Little Falls Parkway and Capitol Crescent Trail are both a stone's throw from Bradley Boulevard, but parkway and trail users who travel along the no sidewalks, no bikeway section of Bradley do so at great risk. Thus, the latest proposed construction delay for the Bradley Boulevard CIP, while advocacy and public resources are increasingly devoted to ensuring safety of parkway and trail users, is of great concern. Proximity of neither one is referenced in the Bradley Boulevard project justification. Finally, across CIP transportation projects, the Council's Government Ops Committee should zoom out to examine why project description forms' comprehensiveness is erratic, missing facts, community attributes. Forms should rely less on narratives while featuring maps of the project's scope and nearby destinations with simple icons and historical timelines. To help fulfill the Racial Equity and Social Justice Act, the Community Advocacy Institute could integrate CIP transportation projects into teaching lessons. Empowering a broader swath of residents to advocate for safety infrastructure should go hand in hand with the Council's capital budget decisions. The Council should zoom to accelerate construction on Bradley Boulevard 501733 while also honoring zoom in and zoom out policy mantras in multiple CIP evaluations. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for zooming in person. That concludes this panel, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We have two more people who will be testifying in person, Kristen Erdheim and Jay Guan.
Are there more people?
There is another panel, yes.
Well, when they're finished, whether you want to hear from me or not, I'm going to make my 1.5 minute additional comment.
Ms. Erdheim, you have 3 minutes.
Council members, my name is Kristen Erdheim, and I'm also an area vice president for MCC PTA, representing Damascus, Gaithersburg, Watkins Mill, and Magruder clusters. We recognize the council may be tempted to accept the reductions and postpone priorities outlined in the Board of Education CIP, but I'd like to remind the council that our children represent the best investment we can possibly make, and delays in funding these projects does not change the fact that they are absolutely necessary in the immediate future. We strongly request that the council find other ways of maintaining the CIP budget with a steady influx of funds, whether through various taxes, PAYGO, or other suitable options, so that any and all planned or proposed projects move forward as planned. As a result of the long delays taken by the County Council to get the projects at Neelsville Middle School and South Lake Elementary School approved and moving forward, there's been a loss of trust between those communities involved and the County Council. In order to continue to build on that trust that was restored when the Council did approve getting them back on track, it is absolute must that the Council ensure all of the upcoming projects are funded as they are all necessary. Our clusters have multiple projects, all slated for either major construction or repair over the next few years. Many of these buildings are over 50 years old and in various states of disrepair. The funding for these upcoming major projects at Damascus High School, Neelsville Middle School, and Magruder High School must be prioritized and not delayed any longer. These projects have already been pushed back years, and we cannot afford to postpone them further. As our buildings age, the cost to maintain them become more significant. We have a number of middle-aged and elderly buildings in our cluster that with proper care and investment can continue to serve our communities well. Repairing and or replacing building systems is crucial to keeping these older buildings in usable condition. In addition to new HVAC systems at Watkins Mill High School and Gaithersburg Middle School being absolute necessities, Woodfield Elementary School has been without heat in many parts of the building recently. A cold building is not a conducive environment for learning. Since Woodfield is not on the list for any major renovations or any CIP plans over the next few years, we urge you to make sure there is funding for their HVAC system to be repaired and or replaced so these children and teachers don't have to wear their winter jackets throughout the day. We also request that Damascus Elementary School be considered for a renovation project soon. The school was built in 1934 and has not had any major renovations since 1980. Our school buildings should not be disposable. They need to be maintained, and we need to think more critically about preventative measures to ensure a long and healthful life for our buildings. Council members, we respectfully request that priority is made going forward to ensure a steady stream of funds for the MCPS CIP budget. With the cost of projects going up and the need for proposed repairs and construction to continue without delay, it is imperative that the Council does not cut these budgets, but finds alternate ways to fund them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Guan.
Good evening, council members. My name is Jay Guan. I'm a resident of Clarksburg, and I'm also a member of the Up County Citizen Advisory Board. Today, I'm here in my personal capacity. Over the past couple of years, I've witnessed my community grow from a collection of construction sites to a full-fledged community. I have been an advocate for the fulfillment of the Clarksburg Master Plan since 2015. I'm disappointed to hear that the county is once again planning to delay both the Clarksburg Library and the Observation Drive extension. The previous delay in capital projects in Clarksburg was the construction of a new elementary school. It resulted in the nearby Clarksburg Elementary, a school built for 300, enroll close to 900 students as nearby developments are finished. The additional portables were an added cost to MCPS, along with the additional strains on the staff. Clarksburg Elementary continues to suffer from this. Delaying the Clarksburg Library will have a similar effect. Currently, Clarksburg residents must go to Germantown or the Damascus Library for services. These two libraries are simply not meant to take an entire town's worth of users. Longer delays will increase the strain on these two libraries and accelerate its deterioration, especially the aging Damascus Library. The delay to the extension of Observation Drive is equally ill-advised. Not long ago, there was a great debate regarding the Mid-County Highway, a north-south arterial road. It was meant to relieve the growing traffic volume on I-270 and 355. It was never funded. In the intervening years, Up County grew. Both 270 and 355 became more congested as they were the only two major north-south arteries that connected Up County to job centers in Rockville, Bethesda, Gaithersburg, and Virginia. The extension of the Observation Drive would provide an additional north-south artery and an off-ramp. Delaying it would increase the traffic on 270 and 355. Furthermore, the delay of the extension of Observation Drive and other transportation infrastructure Up County will hamper the economic competitiveness of the area. Up County has the potential to be the next center of autonomous vehicles and satellite communications. Companies like Robotics Research, Thales, Viasat, Hughes all call Up County home. These companies rely on these transportation networks to conduct their businesses efficiently. To delay these transportation projects is to push them to Northern Virginia. As we know, Northern Virginia is not shy about building roads and expanding transit to make their business in that area more competitive. In summary, delays do not pay. They incur hidden costs, and everyone's worse off for it. The time to build them is now. We need to complete the implementation of the Clarksburg Master Plan. We need to stick to the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guan. Thank you both for your testimony. We have one more individual who's joining us virtually, Herb Simmons. I'm not sure if Mr. Simmons is on Zoom right now. And he is not with us. And that concludes our public hearing, having taken public testimony in before. So this public hearing is now closed. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon.
Were they the last two?
We've closed our public hearings. We're now moving on to item number 8, which is district council session. And we will now sit as the district council for action A, zoning text amendment 2211, technical corrections. The Planning, Housing, Parks Committee has recommended approval. Ms. Nadeau is getting situated.
They don't want to hear it?
Ms. Nadeau.
All right, good afternoon, council members. So ZTA 2211 went to the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee a few weeks ago. What this ZTA would do is a few things. First, because of the increase in the number of council members from 9 to 11, it will change the voting requirements. You will see in the staff report that the items requiring 5 votes are increased to 6, and then items requiring 6 votes were increased to 8. The reason for that, adding 2 instead of 1, is that's consistent with the changes that the state made in the land use article. The other changes that the ZTA makes is it removes a few incorrect references, it alphabetizes a section of the use table, and fixes some grammatical errors. That list is on page 3 of the staff report for you. One thing that I did want to add is after the PH committee work session, council staff did find one more correction to add to the ZTA. In section 342, there was a sentence missing the word A. So really big change there. So council staff is recommending that amendment. Since it came post-committee, you would need a motion for that, which I believe Chair Friedson was going to make.
I will now turn it over to Vice President Chair Friedson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. Nadeau, for your work on this. As we noted when we introduced this, I really introduced this at the behest of staff that wanted to make and recognize that we needed to make changes to adjust the new council that we have, the 11 members, and so this really is a technical change to the zoning code in order to reflect the larger body that we have, and noting the fact that when we made the changes to the rules in November, that was in the interim period where we're prohibited by law to make a change like this. So with that, as you heard from council staff, we have a committee recommendation. There's one very minor change, a change of an A, literally that was caught afterwards. It's in section 3.4.2 of the zoning ordinance, and it would add the word A. And I wanted to move that now.
Because there is a change, it is moved by Vice President Friedson. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Luedtke. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Luedtke. Yes. Councilmember Luedtke votes yes. Councilmember Mink. Yes. Councilmember Mink votes yes. Councilmember Sales.
Yes.
Councilmember Sales votes yes. Councilmember Albornoz.
Yes.
Councilmember Albornoz votes yes. Councilmember Jawando.
Yes.
Councilmember Jawando votes yes. Councilmember Katz.
Yes.
Councilmember Katz votes yes. Councilmember Stewart.
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart votes yes. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Yes.
Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez votes yes. Councilmember Balcom.
Yes.
Councilmember Balcom votes yes. Councilmember Friedson.
Yes.
Councilmember Friedson votes yes. Councilmember Glass.
Yes.
Councilmember Glass votes yes.
And that is unanimous. Thank you all very much. Now we're moving on to legislative session day number 4, introduction of bills. And we will be introducing Bill 723, Consumer Protection Gasoline Station Signage. Lead sponsor is Councilmember Albornoz. Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. I want to begin with some acknowledgments. First, thanking Ms. Wellens and Kristen Tribble from my staff for helping to put this legislation together, and also to State Senator Cheryl Kagan, who brought this issue to my attention last year. There's a state law that requires that the minimum price of gas per gallon be listed, which is the number that we see as we are driving to various gas stations. But that number is somewhat misleading because it does not include the charges related if you use a credit card. And AAA Mid-Atlantic has confirmed that over 90% of people in our region, myself included, utilize a debit card or credit card to purchase their gasoline. And so when you reconcile your statements at the end of each month, you'll notice a discrepancy between what is being advertised as the gas price and what you are in fact paying. And so at the heart of this is a consumer protection bill. And I'll note also that there is corresponding legislation that is being discussed at the state. And I want to thank Ms. Wellens, who worked on confirming that we do have local authority to be able to move this forward. And we feel that we are on solid ground, but obviously we'll wait to see what happens in Annapolis. But we should do, in my opinion, everything that we can to protect consumers here in Montgomery County. So I look forward to deliberation and discussion over this bill on the public hearing, which is forthcoming. I also want to thank all of my colleagues who have co-sponsored the bill thus far. I appreciate your support. And with that, I yield back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Ms. Wellens, do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. A public hearing will be held on February 28th at 1:30 with the Public Safety and Economic public hearing will be scheduled on February 28th at 1:30, and a Public Safety Economic Development Committee work session is tentatively scheduled for March 13th, and that is introduced. Next is an action item on the overview of the amended FY23-28 Capital Improvement Program and spending affordability guidelines for the FY24 capital budget and amended FY23 through 28 CIP. Dr. Orland is getting settled. And Mr. Lubchenco. Dr. Orland.
Thank you very much. This is a very quick overview of the CIP, amended CIP that the executive sent over, as well as the agencies, and we'll go into the material that the GO committee covered last week. So in terms of an overview, the executive's recommending increasing the size of the CIP by 2.6%. In every agency and all parts of county government, with the exception of transportation, there's a proposed increase. Transportation goes down by $89 million, or about 5.4%. Mr. Lubchenco's at the table covered for you, actually sent around to you, I believe last week or maybe the week before, a gap chart, which is on page 2. And Keith, why don't you spend just a minute talking about that?
Sure, yeah, and this chart was sent out as Dr. Orland mentioned. The intent of the chart is to show where the council stands today in terms of its review, and it uses two different baselines. One is the approved CIP in terms of the spending affordability assumptions in that, and then it uses the executive's amended CIP recommendations from mid-January for the spending side. And there are a few elements to the gap that I'll highlight. First, the spending affordability recommendations from the executive were $20 million higher in 24 and 25, and his assumptions for PAYGO were $2 million higher in 24 and 25. So right now, based on looking at the approved numbers that the council had assumed back in last May compared to the executive, that's a $44 million gap in those combined across those 2 years. In addition to that, as part of the executive's recommendations, what he has done and past executives have done for the agency recommendations. He's included affordability reconciliation projects. These are basically placeholder projects that include negative numbers to get the CIP to an affordable level that the executive recommends. It does not include specific reductions to projects. It includes undesignated reductions. So in the end, when the council approves the CIP amendments and the capital budget going forward in May, it will need to designate how all reductions are taken and or reflect increased revenues if there are those. And we can talk about some of those options. But when you take into account the MCPS, Montgomery College, and Parks affordability reconciliation projects, that adds another $48 million in the 6-year period to the gap that I had mentioned earlier. So the total gap based on that with those different elements is about $92 million in the 6 years, and it is a bit front-loaded in 24, 25, and 26. So the council has that work to do to close that gap.
Thank you. Let me turn it over to the GO Committee Chair, Councilmember Stewart.
Great. Thank you very much. First, I just want to thank the central staff as well as the finance and OMB for all their work on this, and my colleagues on the GO Committee. So when the GO Committee looked at the recommendations from the county exec as well as recommendations from the staff, the committee supported what is called option 2, match the GO bond levels in the approved CIP from last year. Overall, the committee was in agreement that we did not think at this time it is appropriate to increase the guidelines given the economic conditions. As we've all heard, the reports indicate that we have a resilient but slowing economy. We did discuss the amount of money available to use PAYGO in the future. In particular, the news that we received last week is that we have $160 million more in income tax. That's $160 million more in income tax than we thought in December when we received our last financial update. As finance looks at these numbers, it does appear that this increase in revenue will be a point-in-time increase as opposed to an increase in our tax base. Therefore, the best use of one-in-time revenue such as this is our capital projects. As Dr. Orland outlined in the materials that we have today, there are other ways of looking at also the gap that we just discussed. We can look at capital reserves and a recordation tax that council can decide moving forward. For these reasons, the majority of the Government Operations Committee selected option 2 to support. I will say, for myself, I actually selected option 1, which was to set our guidelines to what we had back in February of last year. My thinking on this was that as we heard earlier today from residents regarding the infrastructure projects we have and the need to move forward on them. Ms. Beck also talked about this when we had our committee meeting, the need to use some of the state funding under the Built to Learn money as soon as possible. My recommendation was to front load our CIP a bit more, and that's why I was recommending option 1. But I do want to underscore that my colleagues, Councilmember Friedson and Katz, selected option number 2. So the recommendation from the committee overall is for option 2. In addition to that, I will say there were a number of other things that the committee looked at. We unanimously recommend retaining the guidelines and targets for park and planning bonds, and the committee unanimously recommends concurring with the executives and the Department of Finance's recommended projections for inflation, PAYGO, capital reserve, impact and recordation tax revenues, state aid, and current revenue, acknowledging that each may be revised during the development of the amended CIP as we work on it in the upcoming months. I yield back to the Council President.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is a GO recommendation for option number 2, which is GO bond levels in the CIP, $280 million each in FY23-24 and targets of $280 in FY25 through 28. Correct. There you go. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a couple questions of staff and executive staff. You know, we had our first education committee meeting a couple weeks ago, obviously about a third of the CIP. And as you heard from testimony today, some of the most critical projects are school buildings, our HVAC, a lot of things that our community requires and needs. Costs are up. We know from inflation. This gap is pretty big. You know, I've seen a couple gaps, been around the block a few years, and this is a big one. And I wanted to give the, and what I said in our meeting was that we're going to have to, which was our first meeting on the CIP, where we did ask for what I will call all the tools in the toolbox. We asked the school system to send us back non-recommended cuts so that we have that available. But in my view, that is a last option. I don't think it should be an option that we should move forward with. And there are other things that we can do. This is the first decision that we'll make, or at least, you know, preliminary decision, because it could obviously be changed before we finish the CIP, to limit one of our options. And so I'd like to have Ms. Beck talk about why the county executive increased the CIP, the borrowing limits, just for normal people at home, how much money we can borrow to pay for the things that we build, by the $40 million. And could you explain that to our folk, us and residents?
Right. The main reason, excuse me, to change the guidelines, there needs to be a change in conditions, is the way the law is written. The county executive was concerned that we were hearing from our colleagues at the school system that the interagency, the IAC that controls the state school construction funding, was telling LEAs, the local education agencies, to get their Built to Learn dollars committed as quickly as possible. When the Built to Learn legislation was originally passed, we had heard we were going to have over $400 million sort of with our name on it. We'd have 10 years to spend it. That figure then was reduced to $378 million. I'm not exactly sure why. And now it is $357. And they're telling us it could go lower.
They, MCPS. They, the state.
The state.
They, the state. For money to MCPS available from.
And
that's what the county executive considered the change in circumstance.
Correct. It was a concern about having that money further reduced, when in theory it's there waiting for us right now. So that was the concern. We had some significant internal debate about what we should do, and what we talked about and came up with was what we considered a modest increase for 2 years only. And there was some discussion, should it be 4 years? Because many of these projects take 4 years to build. But we settled on only 2.
The first 2 years.
First 2 years. It is a 2% increase in the overall 6-year CIP amount for the debt. So that is why the executive made the recommendation that he did in January.
And Mr. Orland, I see you ready with your mic. Explain to me why you agree or disagree that this constituted a change in circumstance.
Sure. Thank you very much. I'll do this. Just read the law. This is Chapter 20-55C4. Not later than the first Tuesday in February of each year, the council may, subject to paragraph 5, which has to do with limiting how much you can increase a guideline, amend the resolution establishing the guidelines to reflect a significant change of conditions. An amendment may alter a guideline, I can't read anymore, by either an upward or downward adjustment in the dollar amount. I was around when this law was passed in 1991. The clear understanding of what significant change in conditions was a significant change in affordability, not need. This is entire bill has to do with, can you afford to issue more debt? And the way we measure affordability is by comparing it to the debt indicators which are also in the law. Debt as a percentage of population, debt as a percentage of total income in the county, debt as a percentage of total assessable base. And all those figures are well above what the thresholds ought to be. And so as a result of that, we felt it was not appropriate to increase the guidelines, just as we did last year, and the council decided not to go with the executive last year when he basically recommended the same kind of thing.
Okay, Ms. Beck, did you all do that analysis on the debt, and was that your reading of interpretation of the law? Was there discussion about that?
Glenn is correct in terms of the math with the indicators.
Okay, all right. Well, I will say, I'm not going to make a motion today. I just, this week obviously could come back to this. I will just say publicly, I think we need to look at all options on the table, and saying affordability, there's some subjectivity to that law, what that means. And I know you say you were there in 91, but I think things have changed, and we need to look at everything that's available. And I think our residents think that how much we borrow to build buildings that are going to house our students when we have made promises and costs have gone up are something we have to hold true to our commitments. So I appreciate the information. I think the public needs to know what's being weighed and why. Last thing I'll mention is, I appreciate the recommendations on the recordation tax. That I've said this for over a couple of years now, that we needed to increase it when we changed the growth and infrastructure policy. If we would have, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, because we would have benefited from the boom in the housing market that did happen, but we didn't do it. So I hope now that we will do it, and we'll do it in an adequate way that we can keep our commitments, and we'll be pushing for that state aid, and we're all going to be doing that. So appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Council Vice President Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to staff. It's an important conversation that we're having. I just want to note that. I think it's important. The significant change in conditions is an economic dynamic. It's based on the economic conditions. If we realize that the economy was doing dramatically better, but in fact, most of the indicators are for an economy that no longer exists. The economy was doing better. We're receiving resources now for an economy that we have departed from, and we have to brace ourselves for that. But we do have an opportunity. I think it's important to note, and as the chair noted, to use cash in the capital budget, a much more prudent way to address this issue. We have enough cash available above what we were expecting, based on a better than expected economic condition for an economy that no longer exists, to cover the entire gap in cash, which would be an extraordinarily appropriate use of one-time revenues that we weren't expecting, would be prudent, would stick to our fiscal plan, and would prevent us from running the risk of taking out more debt at a time when the economy is showing signs of weakness, not greater signs of strength. So I just think it's important to note this is not supposed to be a discussion of need, although of course that naturally becomes part of the concern as part of the discussion. But there are other ways to address the need that don't require us to take out additional debt or depart from it. I also just wanted to note the difference between the two council suggestions, the committee suggestions, I should say, because I think they're not that different, but they are different. And so I just wanted to kind of explain the difference. I think Councilmember Katz and I don't want to paraphrase for him. We preferred option 2, but option 1 was better than the executive's proposal. I think the chair noted at the meeting, it's fair to say, I'm getting a nod, was the opposite. Preferred option 1, but was more comfortable with option 2 that we had gone forward. Is that fair to say?
I believe so, unless I'm getting option 1, option 2.
But the difference, and I just want to explain it because I think it's important before we take the vote, the difference is whether or not we front load the first couple years and then assume that we're going to make significant cuts in the later years. The challenge to that is the likelihood of whether or not we actually will do that in the out years, or whether or not we would do the same thing in the out years. And then effectively what we would be doing is, running the risk at least of, potentially setting up an expectation for out years that are going to be hard for us to follow through on, because we'd have to lower the debt capacity in those years.
If I could just say, it's not significantly cut in the out years. It's the difference. I mean, we're really talking about a $10 million, $20 million difference in each year. in the out years. So
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. And so, as I was saying, I don't think it's that big of a difference, but it is a difference. I just wanted everybody to kind of understand what the difference was. I appreciate the clarification. The total 6-year amount would be the same, 1.68 billion, which I think is important to note. But there is a slight difference of how likely we would be to stick to that number in the out years, I think was the slight concern. I do think, and there was significant conversation about other opportunities in order to address that gap, not just the difference between the what the county executive was proposing and what the council is proposing, but also the broader gap, because there's an affordability PDF that is not covered, that we're going to have to figure out how to address, where we're going to have to make additional cuts. And so I just want to note that. And I'll close. I said this at the committee meeting. I just want to say this here. Being fiscally prudent and fiscally responsible when times are good, and right now they're pretty good, is much harder than when times are bad. But it's much more important, because we have funds available and we have to be prudent and we have to be sober about the decisions that we make and the impacts that they're going to have. And so I just wanted to note that. And the last thing, sorry, I forgot to mention, with the PAYGO, the council, and it's important for new colleagues to understand this, a couple of years ago, because we thought that we were in worse shape than we ultimately ended up being, the county executive proposed and the council ultimately accepted cutting in half PAYGO, $15.5 million. We've never paid that back because we thought we needed more money to fund the operating budget. We are now in a position where we absolutely should be paying that money back. It's a more fiscally prudent way to handle it. It makes whole the capital budget that did not get the funding that it needed at that time. And I think we can go above and beyond that because of the changing circumstance. It was not an unreasonable proposal at the time that it was made, given the conditions that we were in. But now it's beyond reasonable for us to go back and to make up for that decision based on the cash balance that we are likely to be in at this point, and to go above and beyond that to make sure that we are funding the capital budget in the most cost-effective way. So we don't make that decision here today. We'll begin that conversation with the operating budget, spending affordability guidelines in committee on Thursday, but it's important to note as part of this that this is just the general obligation bond issuance aspect of it, but not the total question of how we fund the capital budget, which is related but not the same. I'll yield back. Thank you, Mr. President.
And Council President, I just have one clarification. I don't think we covered this. I know it's like what we covered in committee, what we covered here. We don't want to do our whole committee session again. But I do think it's important to underscore, the time and consideration that the Government Operations Committee took and staff took to really think about this, because the guidelines we set do have implications for in the future, or as the financial institutions are looking at our bond rating. And if our bond rating does slip, that means it is harder for us and more expensive for us to borrow money in the future. So I think those are all the things that we need to weigh as we're looking at this. And I don't think we raised that here. And just so for people watching, we don't talk about the spending guidelines a lot, but just know, particularly with the CIP ones, what we're weighing as we're thinking about any changes to them. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you, Council President. For the reasons given by Councilmember Stewart in explaining her position in the committee, I'd like to make a motion to go with option 1, which I think is kind of a compromise position. As Vice President Friedson said, it's not an enormous chasm between the two. I think that it is also fiscally responsible of us to consider that that the CIP and the operating budget are interrelated, and ensure that we are not looking at them in silos.
Second.
So option 1 has been moved by Councilmember Mink, seconded by Councilmember Jawando. Dr. Orland, do you just want to enumerate what option 1 is again for everybody?
Sure, I'll go with both options. Option 2, as we've been calling it, is $280 million per year for a total of $1.68 billion. Option 1 is $300 million in FY23, $290 million in FY22. I'm sorry, 24, $280 million in FY25, and $270 million in FY26, 27, and 28. Again, a total of $1.68 billion.
Thank you. There are a number of people who are still in the queue, and this conversation is still going, so Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I appreciate both what the chair of the government operations and the vice president has said about this. I am concerned about the bond rating. I am concerned that and it was an iffy call for me at the committee itself, whether it be 1 or 2. But I'm at the moment believe that this is only one-time dollars. And if you're looking at one-time dollars, and we keep saying, well, at the end of this month we're going to know more. I mean, we're going to get more and more information. But until we get more and more information, as far as I'm concerned, these are one-time dollars, and therefore I am supportive of the option 2. I don't believe that we should be looking at anything at this point other than that this is one-time dollars. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Balcom.
Yes, I've got two points. One's just a clarification. So the, and just, for someone new, the learning curve of being a council member is huge. But the learning curve of understanding spending affordability guidelines right away is massive. So, so thank you for patience. So option 1 is $300,000 for FY23.
300 million.
So 300 million, right? 300 million. So where are we with 2023? I know it's not over. So
likely what's going to happen is we're probably going to end up spending about $280 million anyway in FY23. We're 2/3 of the way through the year almost. Most of the money that would be spent in the CIP is already committed. There may be a little changes here and there. But again, you can always go underneath the guideline. You just can't exceed it without 8 votes. So the likely scenario is that we probably end up with about 280 in FY23. Then if you go with option 1, you'd have 290 in FY24, and then probably that $20 million that you're not using in FY23 would be spent in FY25, or maybe split between FY25 and 26. So you probably have an ending scenario which would be something like 280, 290, 290, 290, 270, 270. And this gets to Mr. Friedson's point. If you do that, how likely are you to stick with 270, 270 in FYs 27 and 28 next fall when you set the guidelines for the FY 25 to 30 CIP? Will you stick with those 270, or will that be an opportunity just to increase them again? That's the advantage of having the same levels in each of the years. But I would have to say from a staff standpoint, option 2 is like our best option. Option 1 is like 1A or something. It's like it's not that much. We wouldn't fall on our swords against that. It still keeps the total within 1.68 billion, which is really important. It just sends a slightly different message in terms of how serious we are in terms of maintaining an affordability for debt over time. Because really, this whole issue is like an ocean liner. You're turning it very slowly over a number of years to be able to get those guidelines, those indicators, where they really ought to be. And right now we were exceeding them, 3 of them, important ones, by a fairly wide margin.
But technically, if we're going to come in at 280, roughly, then the option 1 is there an option 5 of saying, 280, 290, 280, 280?
Well, again, I think the result of 300, 290, 280, 270, 270 is that the probably $20 million of that 300 that you wouldn't spend in FY23 will end up being programmed for 25 or 26. Again, the guidelines themselves, which you need 8 votes to exceed, if you want to exceed it, is for FY23, FY24, and the 6-year total.
Right.
That's why we call 25 through 28 targets rather than guidelines, because there's no requirement that you stay within those targets. You can go higher in those years as long as the 6-year total doesn't change, right? And sometimes at reconciliation, that's what we have to end up doing. In fact, that's what happened last year. Last year, you set the guidelines in February as being 300, again, 300, 290, 280, 270, 270, 270. But as the council put together the CIP, it realized it didn't need to have as much money in the first 2 years. Where it needed the money was in the third and fourth years. And so we took the extra $20 million, if you will, in FY23, and the extra $10 million in FY24, and allocated it to the last 3 years of the CIP, so it would be 280 all the way across.
Okay.
And so I would think the same thing probably to some degree would happen again this year.
Okay, thank you. And then just for clarification, the decision that we make today, there is an opportunity to address that later, but with a supermajority. What's the, is that, and that's in May?
Right.
Is that correct? Okay. All right.
But it's a super majority. You need 8
Right.
votes as opposed to a normal 7 for super.
Super. Okay, thank you.
Extra super majority.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Albanese.
Thanks. I appreciate this conversation. And Councilmember Balcom, it doesn't get any easier. So it's, there's always something new, some new wrinkle. One thing that hasn't been mentioned, and I really appreciate this conversation and that both options are, that's still a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of the overall budget, negligible. But the tiebreaker for me is the escalating costs in capital projects, and which continues to be a problem and isn't probably going to get better. And so having just even slightly more flexibility on the front end may actually end up saving us money on the back end if we're able to accelerate. It won't be very many. We're not talking about a lot of money, but it could if we move things forward more quickly, mean savings on the back end. So I just sort of wanted to make that point. And so I am going to support option 1 so that we can, have that small degree of flexibility, acknowledging, and it makes me feel better from the central staff that there was a preference for option 2, but not falling on your sword for option 1, because I do still have very much the instinct of ensuring fiscal responsibility. We don't want to write checks now that we're not going to be able to cash later. And it does remind us that we are going to have to adhere to and stick to this plan because this is one-time funding. We do need to be judicious with it. And unfortunately, it is not a sign of what's to come based on some of the economic projections we've all been seeing. So I'll support that for those reasons.
Thank you. Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, Council President Glass. I too will support option 1. Given the ongoing needs of our students, the high need for infrastructure investments on school projects, and we're not sure what state aid we're getting, but we know that it's going to come with a huge price tag to implement this blueprint for education. The difference in having that extra cushion is going to allow us the flexibility to front load more projects in fiscal year 24. So I'd rather have that flexibility than be handcuffed to make decisions that are going to impact our students. Thank you.
Thank you. I will jump in right now and associate myself with the comments that were just made. And I think that we have the capacity to front load even by $20 million or so. I think the economic factors and the cost for construction continues to increase, and I think we should do what we can with what we have. But it does require us to have conversations about what will happen later down the line when the needs will not go away. And so we can have this discussion now, we can make these important decisions to help the needs of today, but there will be needs of tomorrow that we have to be focused on as well. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
2 things. Number 1, I worked on the growth policy back in 2022, and the planning board recommended to the county council to increase the recordation tax, but the council did not do it. So I'm with you, 100%. Shame on you guys. But anyway, how to say it? Look, I would say that on option 1 and 2, look, I'm the type of person who really, although I want to support option number 1, I just believe in the numbers today, and I feel that I cannot predict the future, so I will stick with option number 2 on this one. So.
Okay, there are no other requests to speak, and so there is a motion on the floor for option number 1. All those in favor of option number 1, raise your hand. That is Councilmembers Jawando, Stewart, Balcom, Glass, Albornoz, Sales, and Mink. All those in all those opposed? That is everybody else. Okay, thank you. So option 1 is adopted. Any other comments on the spending affordability guidelines?
I just want to confirm that the council is agreeing with the Spark and Planning guidelines. Ms. Stewart summarized it basically keeps the guidelines where they were in last February, and it's $8 million a year, basically $48 million total.
Right, we're working on the committee recommendations.
Okay.
As part of that. Any other comments? If not, is there a motion? Councilmember Mink.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly thank my colleagues for a good conversation, and thank the GO committee for your intensive work on this, and everybody for their thoughtful comments, and just looking forward to the need that I know that we all see to fundamentally re-examine how we budget. Operating and capital are interrelated, and the work that we have to make sure that we are fully funding all of the important issues that we have within the CIP and the school budget. I think we heard some really compelling testimony about also how delays to those, we can end up paying the price for those later. So I look forward to discussing more ways that we can really work together to generate more revenue that we're going to be able to rely on moving forward, and dedicated funding sources. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to move the spending affordability guidelines?
So moved.
As amended.
A second, yeah.
Moved by Councilmember Katz, seconded by Councilmember Stewart. All those in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Very good. Thank you, GO committee and colleagues. And so, moving from the spending affordability guidelines, talking about the revenue that we have and how to program it over the next number of years, we are now taking up the State Transportation Priorities Letter, which in its own way is intertwined in this conversation because it is this county's ask for funds from the state. These are funds that we need in the tune of tens and hundreds of millions of dollars to fund the transportation projects that we need, and the amount that we get will help offset some of the decision points that we just made for the future years. And that's why they're interrelated, and I'm glad that they are back-to-back on this agenda. But let me state one more time that this letter is a request for funding from the state on critically important transportation projects that will guide our future. The last time the council approved a letter for the state was in 2020, and now that we have a majority new body, 2 new districts, and ever-growing demands, it's important that we reevaluate this. And so the Transportation and Environment Committee had a very good work session where we went through the lines and the priorities. There were some changes that were made or suggestions, and I know that the county executive and Director Conklin, who's joining us, took those amendments into consideration and has supplied us with an updated version, and that is the version that we are going to work off today. Correct, Dr. Willen? Right. There's a number of letters. There's the letter from the original letter from the county executive. There's a letter from the planning board. Then there is this new updated letter from the county executive. So make sure that we're working off of that letter. But with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Orland to walk us through the letter and the various components so that we can talk about them individually.
Sure. Just the only other thing to say as an overview, again, this should really be a joint letter. So basically every word in this letter ought to be something that the executive and the council ultimately agrees with. And so what I circulated yesterday after I received the response from Director Conklin from the executive's point of view was a track changes revision to what the T&E's letter was. And so that's in the addendum for today. I think I put it on your chairs also, just in case you didn't get it yesterday. It's circles 60 through 69, and we can just go through page by page, and you can see whether you agree with the executive's recommendations or not. And if you disagree, see how pliable this guy is, in terms of whether or not at least the executive would agree with it.
Let's do it that way.
So on Circle 60 is really just one very small change in terms of basically saying that 19 people died or fatal injuries, just says died on our roads. So it's really, nothing substantive. On Circle 61 is where you begin to get the first, and Circle 62 and Circle 63 is the first major change. This letter is...
Well, Dr. Owen, if I could just stop right there.
Sure.
What I prefer to do is go through the segments. And so you mentioned the segment, you mentioned the change of a single word within the Vision Zero implementation. Right. If anybody has any comments regarding the Vision Zero implementation, recognizing road safety, I know is incredibly important to every one of us in the county executive. Good. Okay, keep going.
Okay. Thank you. The next section is bus rapid transit implementation, and here was basically a ranking of the BRT projects in terms of where we would like to see state aid. The T&E committee had recommended that the Maryland 355 BRT project, which is in the CIP actually now separated into three different pieces. There's the BRT 355 Central piece, which is from Montgomery College in Rockville to Montgomery College in Germantown. And then that project is shown as actually being fully funded in the CIP, mostly with almost half with federal funding, which we are presuming we're going to receive because we're on the federal track for that, and then half coming from toll revenue from the opportunity lanes. And then the other two pieces, 355 North, which is from Montgomery College, Germantown, north to Clarksburg to the outlet malls, and 355 South from Montgomery College, Rockville down to Bethesda, are both in design. They're only funded for design, but all of the money for design is also money that we are presuming we're going to get from the opportunity lanes toll revenue. The executive would like to keep all three of those as the number one priority. The T&E committee recommended that the central piece be the first priority, but the northern piece be the fourth priority, and that the southern piece be, I believe, the eighth priority, with lots of others in between. I might as well just run through all the different pieces of this, if you don't mind. Everyone agrees that the second priority ought to be the Viersmill Road BRT. It's the other project which is fully funded in the current CIP. Here there isn't any opportunity lanes money assumed. It's all basically just general state aid and federal aid, as well as some local money. The third priority is the US 29 Phase 2 bus rapid transit. The council last fall decided it wanted to proceed with, as the preferred alternative, building a median lane through most of the US 29 corridor from Burtonsville down to Silver Spring. Not all of it, but most of it. And that project has already been funded for the next stage of design, but there's no money yet for construction. That was the third priority. The fourth priority, as I mentioned in the T&E's letter, is the Maryland 355 North. But again, because the executive has put that in his first priority, that's how his fourth priority would be the New Hampshire Avenue bus rapid transit line, which crosses through three jurisdictions: Montgomery County, Prince George's County, and the District of Columbia. Here's one where I know the staffs agree, and the committee talked about this a little bit. This is a project that is in planning now, the first part of planning. It won't be finished until the end of next fiscal year, FY24, or maybe sometime in FY24. But we all think that really, if this project is going to proceed, it ought to be totally taken over by the state, given the fact that it is as much in other jurisdictions outside Montgomery County than in Montgomery County. The next priority the executive has is the North Bethesda Transitway as number 5, which is the line from what's now the North Bethesda Metro Station, used to call White Flint, down Old Georgetown Road to Rock Spring Drive, across Rock Spring Drive to the Westlake Terrace overpass, and then connecting to the opportunity lanes. There's a new direct ramp that's planned there to go onto 270 West Burn over to Virginia. So you'd have a continuous busway going from Virginia locations, Dulles, Tysons, Springfield, whatever, to the red line. The next priority, I believe, is the, I have to go back to see what the committee's recommendation was. I think it was the Park and Ride recommendation was the next one. Let me just double check. Sorry. It's a lot of things to keep in your head here.
It
at
is,
once.
Park and Ride expansion is number 7.
The next priority is actually the Teeny Committee's recommendation was actually have the Park and Ride be the 4th priority. Is that right? I'll look at the right one. No. Let me start again. Okay, the Teeny's recommendations were again, here we go. Number 1 was 355 Central, number 2 was Viersville Road, number 3 was US 29 BRT, number 4 was the US 29, Maryland 355 North to Clarksburg, number 5 was New Hampshire Avenue, number 6 was the North Bethesda Transitway, and again, here the executives putting New Hampshire Avenue and North Bethesda a little further up in the list. Number 7 is the Park and Ride expansions. This is on BRT lines which are planned, which we could use more Park and Ride because not everybody can get to the BRT by walking, biking, or ride on. And then the next priority in the executive's letter is the I-270 transit connectors. Now they're basically the replacement for the Corridor Cities Transitway, which had been a number 1 priority for a number of years, but it's been replaced by several other lines. A couple of them are already actually in the CIP and funded by the county. And those, we're not talking about those because those have already been funded, but we're talking about several others which are not yet even in planning.
So point of clarification, Dr. Lynn, I have the I-270 transit connectors as number 6 and the Park and Ride still is 7. Is that?
That's in the executives
Okay.
letter.
We're jumping back and forth, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
okay.
And so that's where we, and that basically finishes up this issue. So the
Right.
question
That's why, Dr. Olin, if we could just keep it to the executive,
Okay.
right, and then we can reference the changes there. But that's why using that as the paper that we all look at, right?
Okay.
So that we're all on the same page.
So
right?
62 and 63 have the rest of the.
Great.
And what you
So,
mentioned.
so let me kick off the BRT portion, particularly with the changes that were made about 355. I remember in the last council, we were presented with various options for 355, recognizing is a 20-mile stretch, somewhere around there, 22-mile stretch, and could not be done in one fall swoop. And at that time, and still to this day, I'm of the belief that as we look holistically about traffic congestion and relief and transit options, we should do our best to help those who need the most help right now, and that clearly is Mid and Up County, especially as we talk about other options that have been provided. And if it remains true that they have to be phased in, I would prefer the central and northern part be first to relieve the congestion where it is. And I'll turn to you, Director Conklin, if we don't think it needs to be phased and the priority is doing it all at the same time, then I can understand having 355 unphased and in one united project. I would support that, but can you share with us if the situation has changed?
We went through an extensive process in the last review of the CIP related to the Opportunity Lanes funding contribution, which was in the neighborhood of $170 million of net present value of that funding stream. And that particular funding stream was not sufficient to allow us to advance the entirety of the 355 corridor at once. From a practical matter, we can design and construct it as a single project, but we didn't have the fiscal capacity to do so with the available resources at the time. As you established, the purpose of the letter is to request the resources we need to meet our priorities. We don't know how much will be delivered, so there still may be a need to phase the project, but it's our opinion that the ask should be for the resources to do the entirety of that project, because as we talked about in committee, and I think this was a kind of a split question in committee, each element of that project has its own benefits to the community. The northern component ties the Clarksburg community into the regional transit system in a way that just isn't possible for them today, even though that community was designed to be supportive of transit in the long run. As you mentioned, there is the most significant equity advantage of that corridor is in the segment between Germantown and Rockville, and that is the part that was prioritized when we thought we had to break the project into pieces due to fiscal capacity from the state funding program. The piece from Rockville South provides the most opportunity for transformation of a retail shopping center centric corridor to a mixed use corridor in the North Bethesda and Twin Brook parts of Rockville and connecting down to the White Flint Mall site and into Bethesda eventually. So that has the potential to be the biggest transformationally economically for the growth of the county. But given that we're asking for this whole project to advance, we think we should make that ask now rather than ask for bits and pieces of it. And we don't know what will be delivered as a result of this ask. And we also have to wrestle with the question of whether the toll revenue survives reconsideration of the way that project is delivered or not. But we should be asking for the $1 billion or so we need for the whole project rather than
So it sounds like you're making the strategic case for requesting funds for the whole corridor, which I would be comfortable with if that's the best way in your estimation to receive as much funding as we need.
And it may be, we may need to revisit phasing again if funding is delivered.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you. That sounds like the right thing to do to me as well. And I'll just note, I think there's a typo also in the BRT section, third graph, first sentence, that we are advanced, remove the word are. I am a former English teacher.
There we go.
But credit to my staff.
I can't find it while we talk, so somebody else will, okay?
Very good. Thank you for that. We love copy editing on the fly. Any other thoughts on BRT? Everybody good with the executive recommendations? Okay, great, without objection.
Okay, the next section is basically a universal agreement with the Taney's draft, which is locally operated transit support. The first priority is for more funds for zero-emission bus infrastructure, both buses as well as charging stations. The second is to extend Ride On Extra, which runs along Rockville Pike down south as Medical Center, would extend it to Bethesda, and also north from Lake Forest Mall to Germantown, and also funding for having it run all day rather than just during the peak. And the third is local operated transit support grants, support for more money from the state, basically for Ride On, with the executive's recommendation last time was to actually increase that every year by inflation. The committee agreed with that. So the executive doesn't have any further markups of this section.
Not hearing any objections.
Okay, the next section also, there's no change, WMATA. The first is to ask the state to provide the remaining funds necessary to fund the North Bethesda Metro Station North Entrance project. And the second is to provide more what's called Metrobus priority treatments, which is essentially, it's like the Metrobus version of Ride On Extra. Again, the executive has no recommended changes there. Well, actually has a word change here, but it doesn't change anything substantively.
Council Vice President Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Appreciate this section. Appreciate the emphasis on the North Bethesda North Metro entrance, or the second Metro entrance at North Bethesda, depending on whom you ask, formerly the second Metro entrance at White Flint, which we have changed. Obviously, I mention that because this is a major priority for the county. This is a critical piece of infrastructure for the imagining and reimagining and revitalization of this corridor to create a greater walkshed. In terms of the BRT connection, as Director Conklin talked about, and that being a critical piece. The other critical piece really is this infrastructure. So I agree that it should be in here. I agree that and appreciate the emphasis and focus on it. I want to thank my colleague who's taken over that part of the county, Councilmember Stewart, for her advocacy here. I just think that we should remove the references to the percentages. The reason for that, for colleagues' awareness, this has been a moving target in terms of the funding levels that the county has committed as part of the capital budget. We had originally wanted to fund this at the county level. We ultimately landed on half in the capital budget. That was then later reduced to 1/3. It's now reduced to 25%, and there is a concern that our side keeps diminishing, and I want to make sure that we maintain a portion of this if and when we get support from the state and or from WMATA to put up money. Up to this point, that has not occurred. Then we can discuss what the partnership looks like and who pays in what, but I think it's premature to include percentages here, and so I would ask that we keep this language but remove the references to the 25% the county is committing to and requesting the 75% balance.
So literally, would you just delete that second sentence then?
Yeah, I think just deleting the second sentence would be fine.
I don't think your suggestion's problematic.
Appreciate it.
Okay. No objections to that change. Councilmember Stewart.
No, I just want to thank my colleague, Councilmember Friedson, for catching that, and thank Director Coughlin for making the changes and really just filling out more the importance of this entrance. And again, want to thank my colleague for catching it before we finalize the letter. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Not hearing any other objections with that one change.
The next section is commuter rail expansion. Here again, there's agreement. The number one priority is to do basically planning work to look at ways of trying to provide midday and off-peak service on the Brunswick Mark line. There's an additional clarification the executive suggesting about MDOT initiating planning study for additional midday and off-peak service between Union Station and Germantown specifically. And the next three priorities are ones that were in the last letter as well, finishing out the elements of the Boyd Station expansion, which is mostly funded by the county now, but there's some pieces missing from that scope. Planning for a new North Bethesda station, which would be east of the North Bethesda Metro station, a few blocks east, and a new Shady Grove station, which would be directly adjacent to the Shady Grove Metro station.
Very good. I will put on my copy editor hat as well, and under the Boyd Station expansion, request that the word complement be changed to complement.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, eagle-eyed staff.
Yeah. Good.
Both are great words.
Good catch.
Right? There we go. Compliment my team. Council Vice
we get
President
both
Friedson.
ways.
Yeah, in fairness to the council president, I will reserve my compliments until it's actually funded. So, but appreciate that. We have a former school teacher. We've got a former CNN producer. So we're all putting our skill sets to bear here as part of this effort.
Complementary skill sets.
Yeah, there you go. Complimentary. Thank you. I would say thank you, council member, but I think I should probably say thank you, Miss Mink or Mrs. Mink. This is a very minor edit and request, but I just wanted to note the importance of MARC and the commitment that our delegation has been making in advancing the MARC conversation, which we all agree would be transformational to the connection from Montgomery County and actually points north, through D.C. to Virginia. And we heard public testimony that I think was important to specifically talk about. Let's not get caught up in studies here. We've been studying this for a while. We could continue to study it for even longer. We want MDOT to sit down with CSX and get to work and actually move the ball forward. I know there's an interest among the state delegation, and so I would just recommend that we tweak the final sentence rather than initiate a planning study to asking CSX to meet, asking MDOT to meet with CSX to discuss adding midday and off-peak service between Union Station and Germantown. That would be the last sentence on the midday and off-peak service related to MARC.
I guess the only question I have on that is that that's not really a money request. I'm not saying it needs to be a full-blown study, but probably anything that the state would do, they'll want to know what the costs and the impacts are. So it may be the first step is to talk with CSX, and they probably have actually been talking with CSX for decades about this, but bring it up again. But that's going to have to be followed up with some kind of analysis to come up with, at least at their level, in terms of.
I appreciate the point, but in no other place do we say, we request that you study doing something. We say we request that you fund a project and move it forward.
Well, we actually say we actually do say here, for example, North Bethesda Station, Shady Grove Station, we say in parentheses, planning. So it is basically a request for.
But that's a
planning
formal
funds.
part, we're funding a formal part of a process. It's like saying funding phase 1. In this case, we're saying we'd like for you to consider funding a study in order to see if we could possibly do something. We know that we want to do this. This is something that we would like to advance, and so I just think that there's an opportunity to strengthen the language.
I don't think there's a disagreement in your intent, but, and I actually do think they have the planning study initiated already. This language might be a little dated. So I think we can come up with some language that looks for more concrete progress than.
We want to see the next
initiating planning
phase
study. Yeah.
of this process to move the ball forward and to demonstrate that our commitment matches the commitment of our state delegation that is working actively on this issue. So I'm not married to the language that I had just suggested, but I do think it would be helpful to strengthen that language. And with that, I'll yield back to you.
Mention
Mr.
specifying CSX in there. Is that part of?
Well, they are CSX lines,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That needs to be negotiated.
Just calling out that.
And we did hear from Senator Cardin yesterday about the difficulties specifically with CSX, but in this attempt to wordsmith on the fly, the reality is that I'm looking at it right now. Right. To initiate a planning, that's right. Initiate a planning study for adding midday. I would simply say that we ask MDOT to add midday, right? You don't need to plan something and study something to get what we want, and what we are specifically requesting is adding midday. So copy, edit out three or four words. So we ask that MDOT add midday and off-peak. And if they need to undergo a survey or a study to determine how to do that, they can do that.
Can I just ask for clarification, though? Actually, I'm just not noticing this. Midday and off-peak sound like the same thing. Do we mean off-peak direction?
Yes.
Okay, so I think we should add that word. So,
Being even more specific about?
Yeah, in other words, in the morning and the evening peak, rather than just having all the trains come into Washington and in the evening all go out, we actually asked them to look at, is it possible to actually have trains going outbound in the morning and inbound in the evening? In the longer term, that's kind of what we're really looking for.
Yeah. Council Vice President Friedson.
Yeah, so midday, how I read it, but it's a good point, is reference to hours, and off-peak is in reference to direction. Is that correct?
That's the intention.
Yeah, so I think you could say midday hours and off-peak service.
Off-peak direction.
Or off-peak direction.
Off-peak service and midday service,
Yeah, okay.
it sounds like the same thing. But off-peak direction is something that's different.
That's fine. And then I just had one other question on this. The county executive included language to specifically refer to stopping at Germantown. I'm not saying I necessarily disagree, but is there a reason for specifying that?
The reason for specifying is that would connect all of the major activity centers that are on the bulk of the Brunswick line with that off-peak direction and all-day service. And it may reduce some of the investment that would be needed compared to if you wanted to extend that service pattern all the way to Frederick or Martinsburg, which is kind of double the distance for much less benefit, at least, and specifically.
So focus on the area that impacts us the
Montgomery
most, that we
County.
think would be the most cost-effective.
Precisely,
That,
yeah.
Okay. I just think it was important to say that, and yield back to you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fani Gonzalez.
I just want to remind people that we worked on the Mark Rail Communities Plan a few years ago, and I don't remember if you were on the council when that was. You were. So the language is already there in the plan that we worked on. So maybe you can highlight it here too, just a suggestion. So it's the Mark Rail Communities Plan. So, and I remember having this very same conversation with DOT in folks dealing with the Mark Rail.
I appreciate that recommendation, but this particular proposal would also greatly benefit a number of communities that are outside of that planning area.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's
Yeah,
just like,
so-
it just reminded me to that.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. So.
We want it to happen, yes. Okay, not seeing any other comments, I think we're good with this section.
Sorry, we are adding language that Ms. Fanny Gonzalez is suggesting, or not?
You don't have to, but I just want to make sure that people are aware, at least. But you don't have to, but at least you're aware. You can go read it if you want to.
Thank you. We're supportive of the plan. No need to be that specific.
The next section on Circle 65 is pedestrian bicycle facilities. Again, there's no disagreement with what Teenie has come up with here. Real quickly, the number one priority is actually having state invest more in sidewalks and bikeways along state highways. Number two is to have them invest more in BIPAs, bicycle and pedestrian priority areas, which are the more dense areas of where pedestrian bike activities are happening. Third is more support for bike share program in the county. And the fourth priority is to complete the planning study for the remainder of the Intercounty Connector Trail. Part of it was built when the ICC was built. A lot of it wasn't, and this would basically try to get it back into the development process.
Great. Without objection.
Okay, the next section is the state highway section. This is state highways not including the interstate program. I'll just run through the priorities here. They're the same with the executives recommending very little change here except some wordsmithing. The first priority is to accelerate the traffic signal modernization in the county. A lot of these are state signals or state-funded signals. And number two is the Clopper Road improvements in Gaithersburg. This was our number two priority last time. Number one was the Montgomery Hills project in George Avenue, which of course has now been funded, which is why it's not in the letter. This is also supported very highly by the city of Gaithersburg. Number three is basically the widening of Route 198 in Spencerville. I'm sorry, in Burtonsville, between Old Columbia Pike and US 29. Number four is widening of 355 from just north of the Milestone Shopping Center in Germantown up to the south end of the Clarksburg Historic District. So that was number four. Number five is a new project for this letter, which is essentially the same kind of project we had on Georgia Avenue, Montgomery Hills, but now on River Road between West Bard and Western Avenue, looking at ped bike improvements and traffic safety improvements through there. Number six would be basically a combination of two things. One is to look at a reconfiguration of the interchange at Georgia Avenue and the Beltway. It's an idea that Park and Planning came up with in the Forest Glen plan, which would just change the arrangement of how the lanes work on Georgia Avenue itself. It doesn't add any, it doesn't change anything to the Beltway itself, but it makes it safer and easier for people to traverse. But at the same time also includes, again, the same kind of projects we did in Montgomery Hills from the Beltway up to and including the Wheaton CBD, which Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez had recommended.
Can I say very quickly, thank you so much to the T&E committee for taking that recommendation. That's all.
Number seven is one I think we need to talk about a little bit, which is the Georgia Avenue Norbeck Road interchange. This is a 25-year-old study that's been put in abeyance and has been brought back some. At the public hearing, you heard some comments from Leisure World folks, some who wanted the interchange, some who wanted widening of 28 from there to Lay Hill Road, which has also actually been under study for about 20 years, but has not moved forward. And some wanted just particularly pedestrian and bikeway improvements just north of Leisure World in that section. And I know Mr. Glass was going to speak with Councilmember Mink about follow-up on that, and so is there a follow-up on that?
There we go. Great. Let's follow up. So I appreciate Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez for her enthusiastic support of the committee's recommendation, and also with Councilmember Mink's recommendation as well. But that really was residents who came and testified, and there were projects that were related. Right, same road, same intersection, and so Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez of District 5, you get the expansion in priority number 6, and Councilmember Mink of District 6. Oh, I inverted that. You got it right. Still getting used to it. The expansion on item number 7 with Georgia and Norbeck, the scope there, and let me just take a step back as well to share with colleagues that while the first item in the packet in the letter is on Vision Zero, we just talked about bike and pedestrian facilities, and now we're talking about intersection. There is some continuity throughout, and as we're talking about the intersections, important to note that 20% of all fatalities on our roads happen at intersections, so the better we are at shoring up and making these safer, the more we will get towards our goal of Vision Zero. I see Councilmember Mink wants to speak.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the attention that stretch is getting now, and hope that we can move forward, and hopefully we'll get a lot of funding and tick our way down that list, but would love to see that priority finally get accomplished. I know that the residents there have been waiting for so long, and I know that Councilmember Katz can speak to, our agreement in advocating for getting that addressed. It continues to be an ongoing and accelerating safety as well as traffic issue there. And putting on my teacher hat again in item 2, Maryland 117, there's a redundancy or a doubling of language. At the start it says, now the Watkins Mill interchange is completed, and then in the last sentence it says, with the opening of the Watkins Mill interchange. I think that we could probably just start that sentence with implementation of these improvements. This is going to get us the big bucks, guys.
I apologize. My mind was diverted a little bit for a second. In the change to number 7, you have the executive's recommendation to add explicitly the missing sidewalk connections on 28 between 97 and 200. Councilmember Mink, was your proposal is it that, or is it the widening?
Oh no, I'm supporting the combining that we have done, and just appreciating the emphasis that folks are putting on that.
But the combining
item.
of what? The combining
Of the 2 pieces that were separate pieces before, and as well as the addition of the sidewalks. Am I missing something?
I'm sorry, a little unclear. I'm just making be really sure. This includes the interchange and now the missing sidewalks along basically north of Leisure World. There was the other option the other possibility that was suggested by one of the speakers, which was to have the widening and straightening of Norbeck Road from George Avenue to Layhill Road. Is that part of the proposal as well, or not? Whatever.
I think that as written, this is sufficient because this is looking at design. So, we'll move forward from there.
Again, we got to be specifically, what are we designing? Because the section from George Avenue to Layhill Road, again, has been understudy for a number of years, but it's been in abeyance for a number of years as well. And so is the idea to resuscitate that study to come up with a project that would eventually be built, or to basically just keep the scope of the study to the interchange and the sidewalks and bikeways just north of Leisure World?
I think Councilmember Luedeke wants to speak to the same issue, so I'm going to...
Yeah, it was my understanding, and when we had the folks here who were talking to us about this, and our districts line up right there, right? So that stretch of road between Georgia Avenue and Layhill, where Norbeck is affected because of increased traffic volume with development along the area, that was the big concern, was that we were having increased traffic along there without additional infrastructure for pedestrians or cyclists, and a lot of congestion. So knowing that what was done previously is fairly outdated at this point and not matching with the existing development that's in that area, to me it would mean that you would be looking at that and addressing pedestrian and bicycle safety, that last portion of that paragraph encompasses all of that. And you have to do that by looking at it fresh with today's lens, with today's population and today's development and traffic in that area.
Okay, so to summarize, and tell me if I'm wrong, again, trying to be my clerk here, trying to be you. So item number 7 would be similar to item number 6. You're combining basically 2 relatively large projects into one scenario, one priority. One is the interchange, and one is the widening and straightening of Norbeck Road from George Avenue to Layhill Road, and we can emphasize what the executive is saying here is particularly addressing the missing sidewalk connections on 28 between George Avenue and the ICC overpass.
I think if we could add the 2 words, address traffic operations.
Right.
And missing sidewalk connections, that probably accomplishes the goal.
Correct.
Well, It's two different studies. If you're looking at actually widening the road to 4 lanes and straightening it out, that's more than just strictly some operational improvements.
But I don't think, at least I haven't heard the two council members asking for that specific solution.
I don't know.
If I could-
the testimony was for
How about
that.
this? I
Are
guess
there
I'm
any
saying.
changes you would like to make?
Yeah, please.
No, I'm saying be flexible about the solution. We need to find a solution. Does
Sure.
that make sense?
We might be searching for an answer that wasn't requested. Councilmember Lutke, are there any changes to number 7 that you'd
No.
like to make?
No.
Councilmember Mink?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so we'd keep the language the executive had, but add the word traffic operations.
I don't know if they've requested any changes.
No.
I didn't hear them say that they wanted any changes.
No, I mean, I think it says that it's constrained and congested, and that refers to the traffic, so I think as written is fine.
As written is fine. Okay.
Okay.
Councilmember Katz, you know something about that area.
Yeah, I do. And I just wanted to, in getting late to the conversation, I just want to say that I agree with the two council members that this has been ongoing. Glenn, I don't know how long you've worked for the county, but it was probably before you came to the county that there has been concern about that area. And I think the bottom line is the study-in days should be gone, and we should actually do something. The state should actually do something there, because it's not a safe situation, especially for the residents of Leisure World who are for pedestrian and other access.
Yeah, the study was started in the 90s. To widen, to look at, it was all Route 28 and 198 from George Avenue all the way to Prince George's County. The piece we talked about a little bit earlier through Burtonsville was accelerated, separated out 15 years ago, because it was thought that was the most important piece, and that's a higher priority on this, in this list. But the rest of the study has really been in abeyance for something like 15 years.
Forever, yeah.
And so.
Anyhow, I'm good. I think this is...
We are all good. And now on to the last portion of the letter.
Okay, on the last one, I want to turn it over to the Director Conklin. The committee and the council members had somewhat different, not too different, but somewhat different emphasis for this section.
Director Conklin?
Sure. In the previous letter, I mean, this section read sort of much more defensively about a county position on the Opportunity Lanes project itself. In the initial draft, we took a step to try to take a step back from the positions everybody had reached, given that the project didn't advance under the Hogan administration, and the incoming administration has at least publicly said that they are looking to take a closer look at this project and what makes sense here in cooperation with the local governments that are affected. So what we tried to do in this language is to, express openness to looking at this project again and working with the state to reach reasonable solutions for this portion of the corridor, rather than specifically enumerating a lot of the specific complaints or requests for the state to live up to commitments that they had made under the framework of the P3 agreement. So we started with language that was provided by council staff here and made some other adjustments based on feedback we got from the county executive and some of his advisors on this topic. So.
Great, thank you. And so as you alluded to, there was a really good conversation amongst all of us at the committee and with the executive staff as well. And the recognition that the managed lane program is an ongoing conversation, that the previous governor left office not having progressed as far as he would have liked, but turned over the project to the new administration, which is less than 3 weeks old. And just last week I was in Annapolis, and I did see the acting transportation secretary, who's not yet confirmed, but I talked with Mr. Wiedefeld and talked with him about the needs of the county and talked about this project, and he acknowledged it's an ongoing conversation. And I'll reiterate what I said at the beginning of this conversation, that this is an ask for tens and hundreds of millions of dollars for projects we want. There is disagreement in our community. There's disagreement on this council about the managed lanes project, but this is not the vehicle to express that. This is a vehicle to ask for funding for projects that we can all agree upon. And in Mr. Wiedefeld's nomination, when Governor Moore presented him for public consideration, I'm going to quote from Governor Moore, who said, quote, "We need a real focus of local engagement and local support in terms of transportation priorities." And he said, quote, "Addressing congestion does not only mean roads and bridges, but addressing congestion also means transit." And Lieutenant Governor Miller, who's no stranger to engineering and traffic in Montgomery County, said during that same presentation, quote, "I assure you that we're going to be partners with our local leaders and community stakeholders." I take them at their word, less than 1 month into office, and so I think the letter as currently written strikes the balance of saying let's keep on having a conversation, and I look forward to taking them at their word that we will have a conversation about the managed lanes. I don't know if anyone has any additional comments. Okay. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you, and I appreciate all the comments that have been made. I was holding my powder just to say something at the very end because I agree with where we landed. I'm really happy that Vision Zero is first. It just sends a really strong message. I think that we're committed to that as a body and as a county. I want to thank the administration, county executive, and Director Conklin and your team to working with us. I think this is good collaboration just amongst us, which doesn't always happen the way we'd like. So really happy to see that. Just this past Sunday, we lost another woman in Aspen Hill, 22 years old, and we're dealing with the infrastructure that we've inherited. But this is sending a bold statement that we want to change that rapidly, and we have skin in the game, and we need the state to help us. I think the 270 transit corridor connections is exciting. I'm glad we landed there, and that's going to be helpful for our up county and other places, and delivering the type of transit that our underserved communities and that life science hub needs. And then lastly, I just want to thank all the advocates that have been chiming in over this, on this letter, on all of these issues. The Maryland Transit Opportunities Commission, Don't Widen 270, the Sierra Club, CABE, all of the folks, because you made this better by chiming in. So thank my colleagues, and excited to send this off to the administration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Council Vice President Friedson.
Yes, thank you to everybody involved. Thank the T&E committee for their work, executive and council staff for all of your efforts and collaboration. I think we got to a good place. I want to thank the council president for having a public hearing on this. I think that was important. Several of the changes that were made were in direct response to that public testimony. I think it improved the process, and I think it got us to a better outcome, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you for that. I hope that becomes the tradition as we move forward. I think it certainly was a positive and helped us to make better policy here, and so I thank you for that and appreciate all of that input.
Okay, not seeing any other comments. Is there a motion to approve the letter? Moved by Council Vice President Friedson, seconded by Councilmember Balcom. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Okay, good job, everybody. So we will return at 7 o'clock for public hearings on the CIP budget, and until then, we're adjourned.